On a
It's all
cold,
right.
rain-soaked night in
I've got you
Chicago,
now.
Elena Rodriguez
You're
wiped down the
safe.
same stretch of counter for the third time. Her chestnut brown hands moved on autopilot, the muscle memory of 15 years guiding the damp rag in slow, methodical circles. 14 hours. She had been on her feet for 14 straight hours, and her lower back screamed with every shift of weight. The clock above the register blinked 11:47, 13 minutes past closing time. Come on, she muttered, squeezing the rag over the sink. Dirty water swirled down the drain, carrying with it the remnants of grease and coffee grounds, and the exhaustion of another endless shift. Her sneakers squelched with each step, soaked through from the earlier rush when the dishwasher had flooded again. The sound was pathetic, wet, and tired, just like everything else in her life right now. Rosie's diner was supposed to close at 11:30, but Elena had never been the type to kick people out right on the dot. Not when old Mr. Patterson still nursed his decaf in the corner booth, his trembling hands wrapped around the mug like it was the only warmth he would get tonight. Not when the world outside was this brutal, rain hammering against the windows with a violence that seemed personal. She exhaled, rolled her shoulders, tried to ease the knots that had settled there like permanent residents. Almost done, she told herself. Almost home. Almost able to collapse into bed and forget, for a few hours at least, about the stack of overdue bills on her kitchen table. $847 short on rent this month. Her sons, Miguel and Carlos, both working 2 jobs each while trying to stay in school. And still, it was never quite enough. Elena was 42 years old, divorced for 5 years, and so tired she could feel it in her bones. But she kept moving because that was what you did. You kept going because stopping meant giving up. And Elena Rodriguez had never given up on anything in her life. Movement outside caught her eye. Elena froze mid-wipe, squinting through the rain-streaked window, past the flickering neon sign that read Rosie's Diner in faded pink cursive. Just beyond the weak pool of streetlight, something small huddled against the brick wall of the building across the street. No, not something. Someone. Elena's stomach dropped like a stone. A child in a wheelchair in this weather. Jesus Christ, she breathed. The rag hit the counter. Elena was already moving, yanking her coat off the hook by the kitchen door, not bothering to button it as she shoved through the diner's entrance. The cold slapped her face. Rain soaked through her hair in seconds, plastering it to her skull, running down her neck in icy rivulets that made her gasp. "Hey," she called out, jogging across the slick sidewalk, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles. "Hey, sweetheart." The little girl flinched. Her thin shoulders jerked up like she had been struck. She could not have been more than 8 years old. Blonde hair plastered to her pale face, blue eyes wide and terrified, staring up at Elena like she was not sure if she was being rescued or attacked. Elena felt something break inside her chest, sharp and sudden. The wheelchair was old, battered, metal frame with one wheel slightly bent, the vinyl seat torn and patched with duct tape. But the girl wore a coat that probably cost more than Elena's rent. A designer thing with a label Elena recognized from magazine ads, hanging off her small frame 2 sizes too big. Soaked through and doing absolutely nothing against the cold. Elena crouched down, ignoring the puddle soaking into her knees. She kept her voice soft, gentle, the way you talk to a wounded animal that might bolt if you move too fast. "What are you doing out here, baby? Where's your family?" The girl's lips trembled. Her small hands gripped a threadbare blanket that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin, knuckles white with the effort of holding on. "I'm waiting for my dad," she whispered. Elena glanced up and down the street. Empty. Nothing but the hiss of rain on asphalt and the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city's concrete heart. No cars idling, no concerned parent rushing over. Just this little girl, alone, shivering so hard her teeth chattered like wind-up toys. "Where is he?" Elena pressed, trying to keep the anger out of her voice, trying not to think about what kind of father leaves his disabled daughter outside in a goddamn thunderstorm. The girl's eyes dropped to her lap. "He said he'd be right back. He had to make a call." Elena bit down hard on the inside of her cheek, tasting copper. She had heard that line before, too many times, from too many kids whose parents never came back right away, if they came back at all. She glanced at the wheelchair's wheels. The right one had rolled into a pothole filled with muddy water, and the girl clearly did not have the strength to pull herself free. "Okay," Elena said, standing up. Decision made. You can't stay out here. You're going to freeze to death, you hear me? Come inside with me. It's warm. I've got food. And we'll wait for your dad together, okay? The girl hesitated. Her blue eyes searched Elena's face for something. Safety, maybe. Permission to trust a stranger in a world that had clearly taught her not to. I promise, Elena added, placing a hand gently on the wheelchair's handle. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help. A beat, then the smallest nod. Elena gripped the handles and pulled. The wheelchair lurched free from the pothole with a wet, sucking sound. She pushed quickly toward the diner, her arms shaking. Not from the weight, but from the cold, from the exhaustion, from the sheer rage at whoever had left this baby out here like garbage. The warm air inside hit them like a wall. The girl gasped, her whole body sagging in relief. Elena wheeled her over to the booth closest to the radiator, the best spot in the house, the one she usually saved for herself during breaks. She grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and draped it over the girl's shoulders, tucking it gently around her neck. There, Elena murmured, crouching down again to meet those scared blue eyes. Better? The girl nodded, but she still had not stopped shaking. Elena forced a smile, trying to make her voice light. I'm Elena. What's your name, sweetheart? Sophie. The word came out barely louder than a whisper. Sophie. Elena nodded like she was filing the name away somewhere important, somewhere safe. That's a beautiful name. You hungry, Sophie? Sophie hesitated. Then, so quietly, Elena almost missed it. Yes. Good. Elena straightened up, her knees popping in protest. Because I make the best grilled cheese in the whole city. My grandma's recipe. You like grilled cheese? For the first time, the smallest flicker of hope crossed Sophie's face. I think so. You think so? Elena put a hand on her hip, pretending to be offended. Girl, you're about to know so. She turned toward the kitchen but paused, glancing back. You're safe here, okay? Nobody's gonna hurt you. Not while I'm around. Sophie looked up at her with those wide, too-old eyes. Eyes that had seen things an 8-year-old should not have to see. Okay, Sophie whispered. Elena moved through the kitchen like her body remembered the motions, even when her brain had checked out hours ago. Butter in the pan, bread on the griddle, cheese, the good stuff, sharp cheddar, not the plastic-wrapped garbage. She sliced it thick, layered it between the bread, and pressed down with the spatula until the butter sizzled and popped. Her hands shook. She did not know why. Maybe the cold, maybe the exhaustion. Maybe the way Sophie had looked at her like Elena was the first person in a long time to ask if she was okay. The soup was already made, chicken noodle, simmering in the big pot since the lunch rush. Elena ladled out a generous bowl, grabbed a handful of crackers, and carried everything back to the booth on a tray. Sophie's eyes went huge. This is for me? She asked, staring at the plate like it was a 5-star meal. All yours, baby. Elena set it down gently, then slid a napkin across the table. Careful, the soup's hot. Blow on it first, okay? Sophie nodded, but she did not wait. She grabbed the spoon with both hands and scooped up a mouthful, her eyes fluttering closed like she had just tasted heaven. Elena felt her chest tighten painfully. When was the last time this kid ate? She pulled up a chair and sat down across from Sophie, watching her devour the sandwich. Cheese stretched in long, gooey strings. Sophie giggled, actually giggled, as she tried to catch them with her fingers. Messy eater, huh? Elena teased, reaching over to dab soup off Sophie's chin with a napkin. Sophie smiled, a real smile, small but real. This is the best thing I've ever had, she said, her voice thick with wonder. Elena's throat ached. Good food makes everything better, she said softly. They sat in silence for a moment, just the sound of Sophie chewing and the rain drumming against the windows. Mr. Patterson had finally left, shuffling out into the night with a mumbled thank you. The diner was empty now, just the two of them. Elena leaned forward, folding her hands on the table, gentle, casual, like she was not fishing for information that might break her heart. So your dad? She started. He's coming back soon? Sophie's spoon paused halfway to her mouth, her shoulders tensed. He said he would, she murmured, staring down at the soup. He's just really busy. He works a lot. Yeah, Elena kept her voice light. Light. What's he do? He runs a company. A big one. Sophie's voice got smaller. He's very important. Elena nodded slowly. Important. Right. So important, he leaves his disabled daughter outside in a storm. And your mom? Elena asked softly. Sophie's face crumpled, just for a second. Then she forced it smooth again, like she had practiced hiding that pain. She died 3 years ago. Oh, Jesus, I'm so sorry, baby, Elena whispered. She reached across the table, covering Sophie's small hand with her own. That's really, really hard. Sophie nodded, blinking fast. It's okay. Dad says I have to be strong. Elena's jaw tightened. Strong. This little girl should not have to be strong. She should be allowed to be 8, to be scared, to cry when she missed her mama. You know what? Elena said, squeezing Sophie's hand. It's okay to not be strong all the time. It's okay to be sad or scared or mad. You're allowed to feel things, Sophie. Sophie looked up at her, and for the first time, real tears welled in her eyes. I miss her, she whispered, her voice breaking. I miss her so much. Oh, sweetheart. Elena stood up, moved around the table, and crouched down beside the wheelchair. She wrapped her arms around Sophie, pulling her close. I know you do. Sophie collapsed into her, small body shaking with sobs she had clearly been holding in for way too long. Elena held her, rocking slightly, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back. It's okay, Elena murmured. Let it out. I got you. And Sophie cried, deep, gulping sobs that shook her whole frame. Elena just held her, blinking back her own tears, thinking about her own boys, grown now and off at college, and how she would have burned the world down if anyone had ever treated them like this. Finally, Sophie's sobs quieted to hiccups. She pulled back, wiping her face with the napkin Elena handed her. I'm sorry, she mumbled. Don't you dare apologize, Elena said firmly. You hear me? Don't ever apologize for feeling things. Sophie nodded, sniffling. Elena stood, smoothing down her apron. You want some hot chocolate? Sophie's eyes lit up. Really? Really? With extra marshmallows? Nobody ever. Sophie trailed off, staring at Elena like she was trying to figure out if this was real. Nobody ever asks me what I want. Elena felt something inside her splinter into pieces. She crouched back down, cupping Sophie's face gently in both hands. Well, I'm asking, and I'm going to keep asking because you matter, Sophie. You hear me? You matter. Sophie's bottom lip trembled. You're the first person who said that in a long time. Elena pulled her into another hug, squeezing tight. Then I'll keep saying it, she whispered fiercely, as many times as you need to hear it. Across the street, hidden in the shadows of a parked Rolls-Royce, a phone call was ending. Mr. Sterling, are you still there? The voice on the phone pulled David back. He blinked, refocusing on the spreadsheet glowing on his laptop screen. Numbers, projections. The Tokyo deal that would net his company $200 million if he could just finalize the terms. Yes, David said, his voice clipped, controlled. Send the revised terms to my legal team. I want this finalized by Friday. Understood, sir. We'll have it on your desk by morning. David hung up. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pressing down on his shoulders like a physical weight. 2 hours. The call had stretched for 2 goddamn hours. He glanced at his watch, 11:47. Then he looked out the window of his car, and his blood went cold. Rain. It was pouring. Sophie. He breathed her name like a prayer, like a curse. His hand shot to the door handle, yanking it open. Cold rain slammed into him as he stumbled out onto the street, his $3,000 suit soaking through instantly. Sophie, he called out louder now, panic rising in his throat like bile. He spun around, scanning the sidewalk, the corner where he had told her to wait. Just a few minutes, baby. Dad has an important call. It was empty, just wet pavement and the glow of a flickering streetlight. No wheelchair, no little girl. Panic hit him like a freight train. Sophie! David ran down the sidewalk, his dress shoes slipping on the slick concrete. His heart hammered against his ribs. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. She's gone. Someone took her. Oh, God, someone took her. He ran to the corner, looking left, then right. Nothing. Just empty streets and the hiss of rain. No sign of his daughter anywhere. No. David spun back toward the car, nearly tripping over his own feet. He threw himself into the driver's seat, water dripping from his hair, his hands shaking as he pulled up the security camera feed on the car's display. Come on! The footage loaded. Timestamp 9:34. There, Sophie, sitting in her wheelchair exactly where he had left her. Rain pouring down, her head bowed, her small body shaking. David's throat tightened. 9:41, still sitting, still waiting. 9:58, still there, soaked through. 10:15, Sophie's head lifted slightly, like she was looking for him. David felt sick. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, "what have I done?" Then at 10:23, the camera caught movement. A woman running through the rain. She crouched beside Sophie, talking to her. Then she stood and started pushing the wheelchair away from the car, away from him. David's panic shifted instantly into something sharper, colder. No, he zoomed in on the woman's face, but the rain and the camera angle made it difficult to see clearly. Dark hair, brown skin, work uniform. She was taking his daughter. David threw the car into gear and peeled out onto the street, tires screeching. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His jaw clenched so tight it ached. If she hurt her, if she so much as touched her wrong. He turned the corner, eyes scanning frantically. There, a diner. Old, rundown. The neon sign read Rosie's Diner in flickering red letters, and through the rain-streaked window he saw them. Sophie sitting in a booth, and the woman sitting across from her. David slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop across the street. He sat there, engine idling, rain drumming on the roof, and he stared. Sophie was smiling. Not a polite smile, not a forced smile, a real, genuine, joy-filled smile that crinkled her eyes and made her shoulders relax, the kind of smile that lit up her whole face. David's breath caught in his chest. He could not move, could not look away, because he could not remember the last time he had seen that smile. Not since Jennifer died. Not since the world had turned gray and silent and unbearable. 3 years. 3 years. And he had thought Sophie had forgotten how to smile like that. But she had not. She just had not had a reason to. And now, watching this stranger, this waitress he did not know, make his daughter laugh, David felt something crack open inside him. When was the last time I looked at her like that? He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles aching. When was the last time I sat with her? Talked to her? Asked her if she was hungry? He could not remember. Because he had been too busy, too focused, too buried in work and deals and distractions that kept him from feeling anything at all. Through the window, the woman reached across the table and touched Sophie's hand, gently, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Sophie did not pull away. She leaned in. David felt his eyes burn, his vision blurred, and he realized with a jolt of horror that he was crying. He wiped his face roughly with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. "God," he whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby, I'm so sorry." He sat there in the dark watching his daughter eat, watching her laugh, watching her be cared for by a woman who owed her nothing. And David understood in that moment exactly how far he had fallen. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. Claire picked up on the first ring. "Sir?" David's voice was rough, raw. "I need you to do something for me." "Of course, what do you need?" He stared at the diner, at the woman wiping soup from Sophie's chin. "There's a woman," David said slowly. "At Rosie's Diner on Madison. She's with Sophie right now." Claire's tone sharpened. "Is Sophie okay?" "She's fine. She's better than fine." His voice cracked. A pause. "Sir, I don't understand." David exhaled, long and slow. "I need you to find out everything about her. Name, address, employment history, family, financial situation, everything." "You want a background check?" "I want a full profile, and I want it on my desk by morning." "Yes, sir." Claire hesitated. "May I ask why?" David watched the woman stand up and bring Sophie a glass of water. The way she smiled, the way Sophie smiled back. "Because I owe her," David said quietly. "And I always pay my debts." He hung up before Claire could respond. Then he just sat there, in the rain, in the dark, watching. Inside the diner, Elena wiped down the counter, glancing over at Sophie every few seconds. The girl was finally warm, finally fed, finally safe. But something still gnawed at Elena. Where the hell was this kid's father? She looked out the window at the rain-soaked street. Empty. No cars slowing down. No one coming to claim their daughter. Elena bit her lip. "If he doesn't show up in the next 20 minutes, I'm calling someone." She did not know who. Maybe the police. Maybe child services. But she was not letting this little girl disappear into the night without making sure she was okay. Behind her, Sophie spoke up. "Elena?" Elena turned, smiling. "Yeah, sweetheart? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Sophie looked down at her hands, fingers twisting the edge of the napkin. "Do you think my dad loves me?" Elena felt the world tilt. She walked over and sat down beside Sophie, pulling the girl close. "Oh, baby, of course he does." "Then why doesn't he?" Sophie's voice wavered. "Why doesn't he look at me?" Elena closed her eyes, holding this broken little girl. and felt her own tears start to fall. "I don't know, honey," she whispered, "but that's not about you. That's about him. And whatever he's dealing with, it's not your fault. You hear me? None of this is your fault." Sophie nodded against her shoulder, and outside, in the rain, David Sterling pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and wept because his daughter had just asked a stranger the one question she should have been able to ask him, and he had not been there to answer it. But he would be, starting now. He wiped his face, straightened his tie, and made himself a promise. He was going to fix this. All of it. And it started with the woman in that diner. The woman who had done in 1 hour what he had not been able to do in 3 years. Make his daughter feel loved. David pulled out his phone and typed a message to Claire. "When you get the information, bring it to me personally, and clear my schedule for tomorrow. All of it." He hit send. Then he looked back at the diner one last time. Elena was standing now, bringing Sophie a cookie wrapped in wax paper. Sophie's face lit up like Christmas morning. David's chest ached. "I don't deserve her," he thought, "but maybe I can learn." 30 minutes later, a sedan pulled up outside the diner. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, red hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing jeans and a designer hoodie. She walked into the diner with the practiced confidence of someone used to handling difficult situations. Elena looked up from wiping down the last table. The diner was empty now except for her and Sophie. The clock read 12:17. The woman's eyes landed on Sophie immediately. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said, her voice too bright, too practiced. "Time to go home." Sophie looked up from the last bite of her cookie, confusion flickering across her face. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I'm Sarah. Your dad sent me to pick you up. He got held up with work." Elena moved around the counter slowly, positioning herself between the woman and Sophie. Something about this did not sit right. The expensive clothes trying to look casual. The way the woman's smile was just a fraction too tight. The fact that she had appeared exactly at midnight, like she had been waiting for the right moment. "Sophie," Elena said quietly, keeping her eyes on the stranger. "Do you know this woman?" Sophie stared at her for a long moment, uncertainty written all over her small face. She shook her head slowly. "No, I don't think so." "You don't think so or you don't," Elena pressed gently. "I don't know her," Sophie whispered, her voice small, scared. The woman exhaled through her nose, and Elena caught the flash of irritation before it was smoothed away. "Look, I understand your concern, but David asked me to bring Sophie home. He's been delayed with an emergency." "David?" Elena's voice sharpened. "That's her father?" "Yes. And where exactly is he right now?" The woman's jaw tightened slightly. "Like I said, he's been delayed. A work emergency. I'm sure you understand how demanding his schedule can be." "No," Elena said flatly. "I don't understand. I don't understand how a man leaves his 8-year-old daughter sitting in the rain for 2 hours. I don't understand how he sends a complete stranger instead of coming himself. And I definitely don't understand why I should just hand her over to someone she's never even met." Something shifted in the woman's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. She studied Elena for a moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "You're right to be cautious," she said, her voice losing some of its artificial warmth. "My real name is Claire Morrison. I'm David Sterling's executive assistant. I've worked for him for 6 years." "I don't care if you've worked for him for 60 years, Elena shot back. "That little girl doesn't know you, and I'm not letting her leave with a stranger." Claire's mouth tightened into a thin line. She pulled out her phone. "Fine, I'll call him." She dialed, and after 2 rings, a man's voice answered. Deep, controlled. Even through the phone speaker, Elena could hear the weight of authority in it. "Claire?" "Sir, I'm at the diner. The woman here won't release Sophie without speaking to you first." There was a pause. "What's her name?" Claire looked at Elena, eyebrows raised in question. Elena lifted her chin. "Elena Rodriguez." "Elena Rodriguez," Claire repeated into the phone. There was a pause, and Elena thought she heard something like a sigh. "Put her on." Claire held out the phone. Elena took it, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit. She turned slightly away from Sophie, lowering her voice. "Hello, Miss Rodriguez." The voice was smooth, each word precisely measured, like a man used to being obeyed. "My name is David Sterling. Sophie is my daughter." "Then where the hell have you been?" The words came out before Elena could stop them. Rough and angry and completely unprofessional. She heard Claire inhale sharply behind her, but she did not care. There was a long pause on the other end. When David spoke again, his voice was quieter, rougher. Working, which isn't an excuse, it's just the truth. Your daughter sat in the rain for 2 hours, Elena said, her voice trembling with barely controlled fury. She was cold. She was scared. She was so hungry she ate like she hadn't seen food in days. Do you have any idea what you put her through? Yes. The word was clipped, final, like it hurt him to say it. I know exactly what I did. Elena closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. She wanted to scream at this man, wanted to reach through the phone and shake him until he understood what he had done to that little girl. But something in his voice stopped her. Not defensiveness, not arrogance, just exhaustion. And something that sounded dangerously close to shame. I need to know she'll be safe, Elena said finally, her voice softer but no less firm. She will be. Claire has been with my company for 6 years. She has full security clearance and background checks. She'll bring Sophie home safely. And I'll be there waiting. And if I say no? Another pause, longer this time. Then I'll come there myself. Right now. And we can have this conversation face to face. Elena looked over her shoulder at Sophie, who was watching her with wide, fearful eyes. The girl was exhausted. Her small body was practically drooping in the wheelchair. She needed to go home, to sleep, to be somewhere warm and safe and dry. But God, Elena did not want to let her go. Not to a father who had forgotten her. Not to a stranger who had shown up at midnight. If I find out you've hurt her, Elena said slowly, deliberately. If I find out she's not being taken care of, if I find out anything is wrong, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care who you are or what kind of lawyers you can afford. I will find you. Do you understand me? There was a beat of silence. Then quietly, I believe you, Miss Rodriguez. And for what it's worth, thank you. Elena did not respond. She just handed the phone back to Claire, who pocketed it without a word. Ready, Sophie? Claire's voice was different now. Gentler, less performative, more human. Sophie slid out of the booth, clutching her cookie like a lifeline. She turned to Elena, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. I don't want to go, she whispered. Elena's heart broke into pieces. She dropped to her knees and pulled Sophie into a fierce hug, holding her tight, feeling the girl's small body shake with silent sobs. I know, baby, I know. But your dad's waiting for you, okay? And I promise, if you ever need anything, if you ever need help or just someone to talk to, you come find me. I'm here every day, every single day, you understand? Sophie nodded against her shoulder, her fingers clutching the back of Elena's shirt. Elena pulled back and cupped Sophie's face in her hands, wiping away tears with her thumbs. You are so brave, she said fiercely. So brave. Don't you ever forget that. Don't let anyone make you feel small or invisible or like you don't matter. Because you matter, Sophie. You matter so much. Sophie's lip trembled. You're the first person who's been nice to me in a really long time. Elena felt her own tears start to fall. Then the world's been doing it wrong, sweetheart. Because you deserve all the kindness there is. She pressed a kiss to Sophie's forehead, then reluctantly let her go. Claire moved to the wheelchair, but before she started pushing, she looked at Elena, really looked at her. And in that look, Elena saw something unexpected. Respect, maybe even gratitude. You did good tonight, Claire said quietly. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have cared. She's a child, Elena said simply. Of course I cared. Claire nodded slowly. Then she pushed Sophie toward the door. The rain was still coming down in sheets, and Claire moved quickly, shielding Sophie as best she could. Elena stood in the doorway, watching as they crossed the street to a black Rolls-Royce idling in the shadows. She watched Claire lift Sophie gently into the back seat, buckling her in with surprising tenderness. Watched the car's taillights flare red in the darkness. Watched until they disappeared completely into the rain and the night. And then she was alone. Elena exhaled shakily and turned back to the empty diner. The booth where Sophie had sat still had crumbs on the table. The glass still had a ring of condensation, like proof that it had all been real. She needed to finish closing, count the register, lock up, go home to her tiny apartment, and try not to think about a little girl with sad eyes and a father who had forgotten how to see her. But her hands were shaking too much to count money. Elena sat down at this counter, pressing her palms against her eyes, trying to breathe, trying not to cry. Trying not to think about all the children in the world who were waiting in the rain for someone who never came. She did not know how long she sat there. 5 minutes, 10, maybe more. And then she heard it. A soft, hesitant knock on the glass door. Elena's head snapped up. A man stood outside. Tall, well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that looked like it cost more than her car. Soaked through and clinging to his frame. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, rain streaming down his face. And his eyes, gray, sharp, intelligent, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He raised one hand in a hesitant, almost apologetic wave. Elena's first instinct was to ignore him, lock the door, turn off the lights, call someone. But something made her walk over instead. Maybe it was the look on his face. Maybe it was the way his hands were clenched at his sides, like he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. She unlocked the door but did not open it all the way, just enough to talk. "We're closed." "I know." His voice was the same one from the phone. David Sterling. Up close it was deeper, more raw. "I just wanted to. I needed to." He trailed off, looking down at his expensive shoes, now ruined by rain and mud. When he looked up again, his jaw was tight. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I wanted to thank you for what you did tonight, for Sophie." Elena stared at him. Up close, she could see everything the phone call had hidden, the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly at his sides, the look of a man who had just realized he had been standing on the edge of a cliff and had not even known it. "You don't need to thank me," Elena said, her voice flat. "I did what anyone decent would do." "No." David shook his head firmly. "You did what I should have done, what I failed to do." The rain pounded down around them. Water dripped from his hair, ran down his face. But he did not seem to notice or care. "She's a good kid," Elena said finally, something softening in her chest despite herself. "She deserves better than what she's getting." "I know." David's voice cracked on the words. "God, I know she does." He reached into his jacket, slowly, carefully, like he did not want to spook her, and pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, expensive paper. Even Elena could tell that from here. He held it out to her. "What is that?" Elena asked, not taking it, not moving. "A thank you. And an apology." He hesitated. "And a job offer." Elena blinked, laughed. The sound came out harsh and disbelieving. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to hire you," David said, and his voice was steady now, like he had made a decision and was committing to it fully. "At my company, Sterling Technologies, Director of Community Relations. Starting salary is $180,000 a year. Full benefits, stock options, healthcare that actually covers things." Elena stared at him like he had just spoken in another language. Then the anger hit. "You think you can just buy me?" Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "Write me a check and make yourself feel better about being a shitty father?" David flinched like she had physically struck him. "No, that's not what this is." "Because that's what this is, right?" Elena's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You feel guilty, so you throw money at the problem. At me, like I'm some charity case you can fix with your wallet and then forget about." "That's not what this is," David said, and there was an edge to his voice now, something hard beneath the exhaustion. "Then what is it?" "It's me recognizing something I should have seen a long time ago." David took a step closer to the door, and Elena saw it then. The desperation in his eyes, the need to make her understand. "You saw my daughter tonight. You actually saw her. Not as an inconvenience. Not as a reminder of everything I've lost. You saw her as a person, a child who needed help, and you helped her without asking for anything in return." "That's called being a decent human being," Elena shot back. "It's not some extraordinary talent that deserves 6 figures. "Maybe not," David said quietly. "But do you know how many people walked past her tonight? How many people saw a little girl in a wheelchair sitting in the rain and just kept walking?" Elena's anger faltered. She did not have an answer for that. "You asked if she was hungry," David continued, his voice thick. "You brought her inside. You fed her. You held her when she cried. Do you know how long it's been since someone did that? Since someone treated her like she mattered?" "That's not my fault," Elena said, but her voice was softer now. "It's yours." "I know." David's shoulders sagged. "Believe me, I know. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. It took her in 6 months, and I couldn't handle it. So I buried myself in work, built an empire so I wouldn't have to feel anything. And Sophie, God, Sophie looks so much like her mother. Same smile, same eyes, and every time I looked at my daughter, all I could see was everything I'd lost." He stopped, his jaw working like he was trying to hold something back. So I stopped looking. I stopped seeing her. I turned her into another obligation on my calendar, another problem to solve, another thing to manage. The silence between them was heavy, weighted with things neither of them knew how to say. That doesn't make it okay, Elena said finally. No, David agreed. It doesn't. But tonight, standing in the rain, watching you hold my daughter through that window, I realized something. I've been so afraid of losing her the way I lost Jennifer that I never noticed I'd already lost her, just in a different way. Elena felt something twist in her chest. I don't need your pity job, she said. It's not pity. David held out the envelope again. It's me asking for help, because I don't know how to do what you did tonight. I don't know how to see people anymore, how to connect, how to care without it destroying me. But I need to learn, for Sophie. And I think you could teach me. Elena looked at the envelope, at this man standing in the rain, soaking wet, looking more lost than any billionaire had a right to look. I don't know you, she said. I don't know your company. I don't even know if this is real, or if you're going to wake up tomorrow and pretend this conversation never happened. I won't. You don't know that? You're right. David admitted. I don't. So I'm asking you to take a chance. Read the contract. Think about it. And if you decide I'm full of it, if you decide this is just some rich man's guilt talking, then throw it away. He set the envelope down on the wet doorstep between them, like a bridge, like an offering. My personal number is inside, along with a check for $50,000. Consider it a signing bonus, or an apology, or just compensation for tonight. Elena's eyes widened. 50,000? It's nothing, David said. To me, it's barely a rounding error. But to you, maybe it's rent. Maybe it's your kid's tuition. Maybe it's breathing room. I don't know. But I know that you gave my daughter something priceless tonight. And the least I can do is give you something that might actually help. He took a step back, rain streaming down his face. Think about it, Miss Rodriguez. That's all I'm asking, He turned to leave, his shoulders hunched against the rain. Then he stopped and looked back. Sophie told me something before she fell asleep tonight. His voice was so quiet, Elena almost did not hear it over the rain. She said you were the first person in a long time who made her feel like she wasn't invisible. His eyes met hers, and Elena saw the tears there, mixing with the rain. So thank you for seeing her, for caring. Then David Sterling walked away, disappearing into the rain and the darkness, leaving Elena standing in the doorway with an envelope at her feet, and a choice she had never expected to have to make. She stood there for a long time, rain misting through the open door, before she finally bent down and picked up the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. Inside, she found exactly what he had promised. A check for $50,000, made out to Elena Rodriguez in neat, precise handwriting. And beneath it, a contract. Director of Community Relations, Sterling Technologies. The salary line made her dizzy. $180,000. More money than she had made in the last 3 years combined. At the bottom of the contract, in that same neat handwriting, was a phone number. And beneath it, a single sentence. This isn't charity. It's an investment in the only person who saw my daughter as a human being. Call me when you're ready. The initials DS were signed below. Elena carried the envelope inside and locked the door behind her. She sat down at the counter, the paper spread out in front of her, and pressed her hands to her face. She thought about her one-bedroom walk-up with the heater that only worked half the time. Thought about her 2 sons in college, both working part-time jobs to cover what their scholarships did not. Thought about the stack of overdue bills on her kitchen table. Electric, water, credit cards she had been juggling for months. Thought about 14-hour shifts and aching feet, and customers who looked through her like she was not even there. And then she thought about Sophie's smile, the way the little girl had laughed when Elena made that stupid face with the grilled cheese, the way she had held on to Elena like she never wanted to let go. Do you think my dad loves me? Elena pulled out her phone and called Maria, her best friend and the only person in the world who would understand this. Maria picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. Elena, girl, it's 1 a.m. What happened? Maria? Elena's voice shook. I think I just got offered a job by a billionaire. There was a pause. I'm putting on pants. Put coffee on. I'll be there in 20. The line went dead. Elena set her phone down and looked at the contract again, at the number that would change everything. at the man's handwriting, slightly messy, like he had written it quickly, like he had needed to get it out before he changed his mind. She thought about her mother's voice years ago, warning her, "Never owe these people anything, mija. They don't give without taking. They always want something." But she also thought about Sophie, about the chance to make sure that little girl was okay, about the chance to maybe, possibly, help a broken man learn how to be a father again, about the chance to do work that actually mattered instead of just surviving day to day. Elena took a breath and picked up her phone. She saved David Sterling's number in her contacts. She did not call, not yet, not tonight, but tomorrow she would call, because maybe, just maybe, this was the door she had been waiting for her whole life, the door she had worked for, fought for, survived for. And Elena Rodriguez had never been afraid to walk through a door, even if she had no idea what was waiting on the other side. Elena Rodriguez stood at the base of the Sterling Technologies building and tilted her head back. 52 floors of steel and glass reflected the Chicago sky like a mirror, like a wall between worlds. She smoothed down her blazer, the only one she owned, bought 5 years ago from a department store clearance rack, and took a breath that did nothing to calm the hammering in her chest. Her phone buzzed. Maria's text appeared on the screen. "You got this, Hermana. Show them who Elena Rodriguez is." Elena smiled tightly, slipped the phone into her purse, and pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby hit her immediately. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection walking beneath her feet. A reception desk that looked like it cost more than her car. And people, dozens of them, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about rent or overdue bills or whether the electricity would still be on when you got home. Every single one of them turned to look at her. Elena felt their eyes assess her in half a second. The cheap blazer that pulled slightly at the shoulders, the department store heels that were already pinching her toes, the brown skin that marked her as different in a sea of white faces and tailored suits. She could almost hear their thoughts, loud as gunshots in the quiet lobby. "She does not belong here." Elena lifted her chin and walked to the reception desk, her heels clicking on that perfect marble, each step an announcement that she was here whether they liked it or not. "Elena Rodriguez," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "I have an appointment with Mr. Sterling." The receptionist's smile was professional but cold, practiced and empty as a hotel greeting. "Of course, 50th floor. Elevators are to your right." Elena rode up alone, watching the numbers climb. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls. A woman who looked like she was trying too hard to belong somewhere she didn't. Hair pulled back so tight it made her temples ache. Lipstick she had applied 3 times because her hands kept shaking. The blazer that had seemed fine at home but looked shabby and worn under these bright lights. "You are enough," she told her reflection silently. "You earned this." But the voice in her head, the one that sounded like every guidance counselor who had told her to aim lower, every customer who had snapped their fingers for more coffee, every man who had looked through her like she was invisible, whispered back, "Did you? Or did you just get lucky?" The doors opened out the 50th floor, all glass walls and sleek desks and the quiet hum of money being made. A woman approached immediately, blonde, early 40s, wearing a suit that probably cost 3 months of Elena's old salary. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Diane Foster, Director of Public Relations. Welcome to Sterling Technologies." She didn't offer her hand. Elena noticed. "Thanks," Elena said evenly, keeping her voice neutral, professional. "Mr. Sterling is in a meeting, but he asked me to give you a tour and introduce you to the team." Diane's tone suggested this was the last thing she wanted to be doing. This way. They walked through an open office space, heads turned, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Elena heard the whispers, not loud enough to confront, but loud enough to hear. "That's her. Affirmative action hire. I heard she's sleeping with Sterling." Elena's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. She had heard worse, had survived worse. This was just another test. Another room full of people who had already decided she didn't belong. She had been proving them wrong her whole life. Diane led her to a conference room where 7 people sat around a massive table, all white, except for one Asian man, all wearing expressions that ranged from curious to openly hostile. "Everyone, this is Elena Rodriguez, our new Director of Community Relations." Diane's introduction was flat, perfunctory, like she was announcing the weather. "Elena, this is the executive team." A man at the head of the table stood, Mid-40s, sandy hair, expensive suit, and a smile that made Elena's skin crawl. Richard Kane, VP of Marketing. He extended his hand, and when Elena shook it, his grip lingered just a second too long. "Welcome aboard, Elena, was it? That's a lovely name." The condescension dripped from every word, thick and obvious as oil on water. "Miss Rodriguez is fine," Elena said, pulling her hand back. The others introduced themselves, names and titles that blurred together. James Chen, CFO, quiet and calculating. Patricia Mills, the only other woman, head of legal, with sympathetic eyes that suggested she knew exactly what Elena was walking into. Michael Torres, operations, who wasn't Latino despite the name. Diane, who had already made her position clear. And Richard Kane, who was watching Elena like a cat watches a mouse. Elena took the empty seat at the far end of the table, as far from Richard as the geometry of the room allowed. "So," Richard said, leaning back in his chair with the ease of someone who had never been challenged in his life. "Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Elena? What makes you qualified for this position?" There it was, the test. Elena had known it was coming from the moment she walked through those glass doors. "I've spent 15 years in customer service and hospitality," she said calmly, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I understand people, how to read them, how to connect with them, how to make them feel seen." "Customer service." Richard's smile widened, showing perfect white teeth. "So waitressing," among other things. "Fascinating." Richard exchanged a glance with Diane. "And you think that translates to corporate community relations how exactly?" Elena held his gaze. She could feel everyone watching, waiting to see if she would stumble. "Because community relations isn't about spreadsheets or marketing campaigns," she said. "It's about people, real people, the ones your company affects with every decision you make. And I know those people because I am those people." The room went silent. Richard's smile tightened, just slightly. "Well, that's certainly a unique perspective." "It's the perspective you need," Elena said, "unless you're planning to keep making decisions in a vacuum and wondering why communities push back." Diane cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the quarterly initiatives." "Actually," Richard interrupted, and Elena saw the trap forming in his eyes. "I'd love to hear Elena's thoughts on our current community programs, since she has such valuable insight." It wasn't a question. It was a trap. Elena had no access to any files yet, hadn't been briefed, had literally walked in the door 15 minutes ago. But Richard knew that. He wanted to watch her stumble, wanted to prove to everyone in this room that she didn't belong. Elena leaned forward, folding her hands on the table. "I don't know your current programs yet," she said, "but I know this. If you're sitting in this room making decisions about communities you've never been to, about people you've never met, then whatever you're doing isn't working." "That's quite an assumption," Richard said. "It's an observation. Community relations isn't about press releases and charity galas. It's about showing up, listening, actually caring about the people affected by your business decisions." "We do care," Diane said, her voice sharp. "We donate millions every year." "Donating money isn't the same as caring," Elena cut in. "It's the easiest thing in the world to write a check. The hard part is actually engaging with people, treating them like partners, not PR opportunities." The door opened. Every head turned. David Sterling walked in, and the energy in the room shifted immediately. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like it was made for him because it probably was. His gray eyes swept the room, landing on Elena for just a moment. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe. "Sorry I'm late," David said. "Please continue." Richard straightened in his chair. "We were just discussing Elena's approach to community relations." "And?" David's voice was neutral, but Elena caught the edge underneath. "It's interesting," Richard said carefully. "Unconventional." David pulled out the chair next to Elena and sat down. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone in the room. He was positioning himself as her ally, her protector, and everyone at this table knew it. "Unconventional is exactly what I hired her for," David said. "This company needs fresh perspectives. We've been operating in an echo chamber for too long." He turned to Elena. "What were you saying?" Elena felt everyone's eyes on her. This was the moment. The moment she either proved she belonged here or confirmed every doubt in the room. "I was saying that if we want to do real community relations, we need to stop treating communities as obstacles to manage and start treating them as partners," she said. "That means actual engagement, town halls, listening sessions, bringing community voices into our decision-making process before we make decisions that affect them. That sounds time-consuming, Diane said. It is, Elena agreed. But it's also the difference between a company that extracts value from communities and one that creates value with them. Richard leaned back, his smile gone. With all due respect, Miss Rodriguez, this is a technology company. We're in the business of innovation, not social work. Technology doesn't exist in a vacuum, Elena shot back. Every product you create, every factory you build, every worker you hire, it affects real people in real communities. And if you don't account for that, if you don't build those relationships, then you're just setting yourself up for backlash down the line. David was watching her intently. Go on. Take your manufacturing plants, Elena said, her confidence building with every word. I'm guessing they're in low-income communities because land is cheaper and regulations are looser. Those communities bear the environmental impact, the traffic, the strain on infrastructure. What are you giving back? And I don't mean token donations. I mean real investment, job training programs, environmental cleanup, healthcare partnerships. The room was dead silent. Richard's jaw was tight. Diane looked like she had swallowed something sour. But Patricia Mills, the woman from legal, was nodding slowly. And David was almost smiling. That's exactly what I want to hear, he said quietly. He stood up and everyone else immediately stood too. Richard, Diane, I want you to work with Elena on developing a comprehensive community engagement strategy. She'll have full autonomy to design it, and you'll provide whatever resources she needs. Richard's mouth opened, then closed. Of course, sir. David looked at Elena. My office, 15 minutes. Then he walked out, and the room exhaled collectively. Elena stood, gathering the notebook she hadn't even had a chance to open. As she headed for the door, Richard stepped into her path. A word of advice, he said, his voice low and pleasant, but his eyes were cold. This isn't a diner. You can't just charm your way through corporate politics. Elena met his gaze steadily. And you can't condescend your way out of irrelevance, she said. The world's changing, Richard. Try to keep up. She walked past him, feeling his glare burn into her back. In the elevator, alone again, Elena let herself shake. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her thighs. She had just made enemies on her first day, powerful enemies. But she had also told the truth, and David had backed her. For now, at least. That was enough. The elevator doors opened on the 52nd floor, the executive level. Claire Morrison was waiting, David's assistant, the woman who had picked up Sophie that rainy night. He's ready for you, she said, and there was something almost like warmth in her voice. Nice work down there, by the way. Richard's been running this place like his personal kingdom for too long. Elena followed her to David's office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, a desk that looked more like art than furniture. And David, standing with his back to the door, staring out at Chicago. Close the door, he said without turning around. Elena did. David turned, and she saw the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried. You handled that well, he said. I made enemies. You made a statement. There's a difference. He moved to his desk and pulled out a folder. Richard Kane has been with this company for 8 years. He's effective, but he's also a bully. He's going to test you, push back, try to undermine you. I can handle Richard, Elena said. David looked at her for a long moment. I believe you, but I need you to know this isn't going to be easy. You're walking into a system designed to keep people like you out. They're going to question everything you do. They're going to wait for you to fail. I know. And you're still here. It wasn't a question. Elena thought about Sophie, about the little girl who had looked at her like she was the only person in the world who cared. I'm still here, she said. David nodded slowly, then almost to himself. Thank you for not giving up before you even started. Don't thank me yet, Elena said. Wait until you see what I'm about to do to your quarterly budget. For the first time since she had met him, David Sterling smiled, a real smile. And Elena realized that maybe, just maybe, she had made the right choice after all. The first 3 weeks moved like a dream, or maybe a nightmare, depending on the hour. Elena's office was modest, but hers, with a view of Chicago that made her heart catch every morning. The city spread out below her like a promise, like proof that she had climbed higher than anyone had thought possible. Claire Morrison became her first real ally. Over coffee in the break room, the kind that cost $8 a cup and tasted like someone had liquefied money, Claire gave her the real lay of the land. "Watch Richard," Claire said quietly, glancing over her shoulder to make sure they were alone. "He's done this before." "Done what?" "Destroyed people who threaten him." 3 years ago, David hired Marcus Williams. Black man, community organizer from Bronzeville. Elena leaned in, listening. "Marcus built incredible programs," Claire continued. "Kids' coding camps, job training for ex-offenders. The community loved him, the press loved him, and Richard couldn't stand it." "What happened?" Claire's expression darkened. "Richard spread rumors, falsified budget reports, made it look like Marcus was embezzling funds. It took 8 months, but eventually Marcus quit. Couldn't take the pressure anymore." "Jesus, did David know?" "Not until after," Claire said. "This was right after Jennifer died. David was barely functional. He wasn't paying attention to anything except surviving each day." Elena felt ice settle in her stomach. Claire met her eyes. "You have something Marcus didn't, though." "What?" "David's actually watching now. Since that night with Sophie, he's present again. And you have me." She paused, then added, "And I think Diane's starting to crack. She's tired of being Richard's puppet." "What makes you think that?" "Because she came to my office yesterday and asked about you. Wanted to know if you were for real." "What did you tell her?" "That you're the real deal. And that if she's smart, she'll pick the right side before it's too late." That night, Elena worked late on her first major proposal, a job training center in South Chicago. Budget of $2 million for the first year. Partnerships with local community colleges. Scholarships for single mothers. Childcare support so women could actually attend classes. She was so focused on the spreadsheet that she didn't hear the wheelchair wheels until they were right outside her door. Elena looked up and her heart stopped. Sophie, the little girl, was wheeling herself down the hallway, David walking beside her, not pushing her, just walking, letting her navigate on her own. "Miss Elena!" Sophie's face lit up like Christmas morning. She wheeled herself faster, nearly crashing into Elena's desk in her excitement. Elena dropped to her knees and pulled Sophie into a hug, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. "Hi, sweetheart," Elena whispered. "What are you doing here?" "Dad's giving me a tour," Sophie said, pulling back with a grin. "He takes me to work sometimes now, on special nights." David appeared in this doorway, and Elena saw something new in his face. Not the broken man from that rainy night. Something softer, more present. "I hope we're not interrupting," he said. "Never," Elena said, standing up but keeping one hand on Sophie's shoulder. Sophie reached into a backpack hanging on her wheelchair and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a drawing, done in crayon. 3 figures sitting at a table, one in a wheelchair, one with dark hair, one tall and broad-shouldered. "I drew us," Sophie said shyly. "At the diner, that night." Elena took the drawing, her eyes burning. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "You're my family," Sophie said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Elena looked up at David and saw his eyes were wet. "We should let you get back to work," he said, his voice rough. "Come visit any time," Elena told Sophie. "My door's always open for you." After they left, Elena sat at her desk, holding the drawing. She taped it to her wall, right where she could see it every day, a reminder of why she was here, why she was fighting. The job training center proposal went to the finance committee 2 weeks later. Elena stood at the front of the conference room, her laptop connected to the big screen, presenting her plan. Richard was there, Diane, James Chen, the CFO, Patricia Mills, and 3 board members she had never met. $2 million is a significant investment with unclear ROI, James said, studying the numbers. "Return on investment can't always be measured in quarterly reports," Elena countered. "This is about building trust with communities, about showing them we're invested in their success, not just extracting value." "We're a tech company," Richard said, "not a social services agency." "We're a company that builds technology for people," Elena shot back. "If communities don't trust us, they won't buy from us. This isn't charity, it's smart business." Patricia Mills spoke up. "I think it's worth exploring. The legal liability of not engaging with communities is significant. Lawsuits, protests, regulatory scrutiny. This could actually save us money in the long run." Elena could have kissed her. The vote was 4-3, barely passed, but it passed. David's vote had been the deciding factor. 2 months later, the Southside Job Training Center opened its doors. Elena stood in the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by community leaders, single mothers, people who looked like her family, like her neighbors, like everyone she had ever known. 50 people applied the first week, 200 by the end of the month. The Chicago Tribune ran a story. Sterling Tech invests in communities. Forbes picked it up online. The waitress revolutionizing corporate responsibility. Elena's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with interview requests. And Richard Kane watched the news coverage from his office, his jaw tight, his eyes calculating. 3 months in, the cracks started showing. A board meeting, Richard presenting the quarterly financial review. Slide 7 appeared on the screen. Community programs budget variance. Elena's experimental initiatives have exceeded projected costs by 23%, Richard said, his voice measured and reasonable. While we support social responsibility, fiscal discipline is paramount. We're 23% over because we're serving 300% more people than projected, Elena countered. That's success, not failure. Success is measured in shareholder value, Richard said smoothly, not feel-good stories. David intervened. Continue as planned. We can absorb the variance. Of course, David, Richard said. But the seed was planted. Elena could see it in the way the board members exchanged glances, the way they looked at her like she was a liability instead of an asset. The Morrison International deal was supposed to be David's crowning achievement, $200 million, a partnership with one of the oldest manufacturing companies in America. Philip Morrison was old money, old guard, the kind of man who thought the 50s were the good old days and meant it. The dinner meeting was held at a steakhouse that cost more per meal than Elena used to make in a week. David insisted she attend. I hear you're going progressive, Morrison said over his scotch, looking at David like a disappointed grandfather. That's not the Sterling Tech I knew. We're evolving, David said carefully. Investing in communities is good business. Morrison's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to David. My board values traditional business practices. Stakeholder capitalism is a fad. It'll blow over. The implied threat was clear. Get back in line or lose the deal. That night, Richard Kane sat alone in his office, running the numbers. If the Morrison deal fell apart, the board would panic. They would look for someone to blame. And Elena's progressive programs would be the perfect scapegoat. He made a phone call, encrypted, to a consultant who specialized in digital security. The kind of person you found on dark web forums, not LinkedIn. I need access to someone's workstation, Richard said, remotely, without them knowing. The voice on the other end quoted a price. Richard didn't hesitate. Done. 2 weeks later, Diane Foster knocked on Elena's door at 6 in the evening. The office was mostly empty. Can we talk? Elena gestured to the chair across from her desk. Of course. Diane sat down, and for the first time since Elena had met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. I owe you an apology, Diane said. I've been complicit. She told her story. How she had started at Sterling 12 years ago. How she had fought to be taken seriously as a woman in a male-dominated field. How Richard had convinced her that Elena was a threat, that David was making a mistake. But watching you these past months, Diane said, her voice soft, you're doing what I should have been doing, what I was too afraid to do. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked. See, because Richard's planning something, Diane said, and I want to help you stop it. 3 nights later, they met at Elena's apartment, a war council. Elena, Claire, Diane, and Patricia Mills from legal. Maria was there too, because she had brought tamales and insisted that if they were plotting, they needed to eat. Richard met with some consultants last week, Claire said, pulling up notes on her laptop. Digital security specialists, the kind you don't find through normal channels. He requested Elena's personnel file, Patricia added, asked for access logs, wanted to know about her computer usage patterns. He's setting something up, Diane said. I don't know what yet, but it's coming. Then we document everything, Elena said. We build our own evidence, and when he makes his move, we're ready. Patricia looked around the table at the 4 women, then at Maria, who was dividing tamales onto paper plates. You know what this is? Patricia said. This is every woman who's ever been told she doesn't belong. Finally saying enough. They worked until midnight, building files, connecting dots, preparing for a war they knew was coming but couldn't see yet. When everyone left, Maria stayed behind to help clean up. You okay, Hermana? She asked, loading paper plates into the trash. Elena sat on her couch, suddenly exhausted. I made it this far. That's something. You made it this far because you're a badass, Maria corrected. And because you're fighting for something that matters. She sat down next to Elena, putting an arm around her shoulders. Sophie came by my diner last week with David, Maria said. Did you know that? Elena looked up. No. She told everyone who would listen about Miss Elena. About how you saved her. About how you're changing the world. Maria squeezed Elena's shoulder. That little girl thinks you hung the moon. And you know what? She's right. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. What if I fail? What if Richard wins and I lose everything? Then you'll have tried, Maria said simply. And that's more than most people can say. 2 weeks later, on a Monday morning, Elena arrived at work to find the atmosphere wrong. People wouldn't meet her eyes. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Her phone rang. HR. Miss Rodriguez, please come to the 50th floor conference room. Immediately. Elena's stomach dropped. She stood up, grabbed her phone, and walked to the elevator. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The elevator ride up felt like it lasted hours. The doors opened, and Elena knew, with cold certainty, that everything was about to change. The conference room door stood open. Inside, she could see Jessica Chen from legal, 2 security officers, and Richard Kane, barely hiding a smile. Elena took a breath, lifted her chin, and walked through the door. Whatever came next, she would face it standing. Elena walked into the conference room and felt the air change, thick and heavy like the moment before a storm breaks. Jessica Chen from legal sat at the head of the table, her expression professionally neutral. 2 security officers stood against the back wall, not threatening but present, final, and Richard Kane leaned against the window, his face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Rodriguez, Jessica said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. Elena remained standing. Her purse hung heavy on her shoulder. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. What's this about? Jessica slid a folder across the table. We need to discuss a security breach. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward, changing everything. Elena opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, server logs. Her name highlighted in yellow, timestamps, IP addresses. Her employee ID number repeated over and over like an accusation. Confidential documents were leaked to the press over the weekend, Jessica said. Documents relating to our bidding process for the Morrison International contract. Elena's blood went cold. The leak originated from your workstation, Jessica continued, pulling out more papers, laying them on the table like evidence in a trial. Your login credentials, your IP address. Sunday morning, 2:47 a.m., you accessed the executive drive and downloaded classified files. 30 minutes later, those files were sent to 3 journalists. That's impossible, Elena breathed. I wasn't even here Sunday. I was home with my son. Miguel came to visit from school. We stayed up watching movies. He can verify this. We have the server logs, Jessica said. Not unkindly, but firmly. Your credentials accessed the executive drive multiple times between 2 a.m. and 3:30. The files were downloaded, and 30 minutes later, they were sent to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Chicago Tribune. Then someone used my login, Elena said, her voice rising despite herself. Someone stole my password. Your password was changed 3 days ago, Richard interjected quietly, still by the window. Only you would have known the new one. Elena spun to face him. She saw it then, just for a second, the flash of satisfaction in his eyes before he smoothed it away, replaced it with that same false concern. It was you, Elena said. Richard's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation, Elena, and frankly, it sounds like deflection. Miss Rodriguez, Jessica said, her voice sharp now. Making unfounded accusations will only make your situation worse. Elena's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream, wanted to flip the table, wanted to make them listen. But she had seen this before, had lived this, knew how quickly a woman's anger became aggression, how defending yourself became attacking others. She was already guilty in their eyes. Anything she did now would only confirm it. The board met this morning, Jessica continued. Emergency session. Given the severity of the breach and the evidence, they voted to suspend you immediately, pending federal investigation. The words hit like a physical blow. Suspend me. Effective immediately, Jessica said. You'll need to surrender your badge and building access. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. No, Elena's voice cracked. "No, you can't. I need to talk to David. Where is he?" "Mr. Sterling has been informed," Jessica said. "He's in New York for the Morrison meeting. He'll be briefed when he returns." "Then call him right now. Let me talk to him." "I'm sorry, Miss Rodriguez. The decision has been made." The security officer stepped forward. Not aggressive, but the message was clear. "This is a setup," Elena said, looking at each of them. "And you know it." "Elena," Richard said, his voice soft, almost gentle. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." She looked at him, really looked, and understood. He had planned this. Every step, every detail. The badge clone, the password theft, the perfect timing when David was out of town. He had built a trap so carefully, so completely, that there was no way out. The walk through the office was the longest of Elena's life. 200 employees, most of them looking away, some watching with undisguised curiosity. A few sympathetic faces in the crowd. The young woman from accounting, the one whose daughter Elena had helped get a scholarship, crying at her desk. Diane Foster, pale and stricken, mouthing, "I'm sorry." And Richard, standing at his office window, watching her go with an expression of satisfaction he no longer bothered to hide. Elena packed her things into a cardboard box. The photo of her sons, Miguel and Carlos, grinning at her from behind cheap frames. The coffee mug Maria had given her that said "World's Best Badass." Sophie's drawing, still taped to her wall, the three of them at the diner table. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her phone twice. The lobby was worse. The marble floor she had walked across 3 months ago with her chin up, determined to prove she belonged. Now she crossed it with security at her elbows, a box of her life in her arms, and 200 pairs of eyes watching her fall. The receptionist who had been cold on day one now looked vindicated. "I knew she didn't belong here." Outside, the Chicago air slapped her face, cold and sharp and real. Elena made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She sat down on a bench in a small park, surrounded by lunch-hour crowds who didn't know or care that her world had just imploded. Her phone buzzed. Text from Maria. "I just heard. Coming to get you. Where are you?" Elena couldn't even type a response. Her hands were shaking too hard. Another text from a number she didn't recognize. "I'm sorry. I tried to stop them." It was signed with just the letter D. Diane Foster. Elena closed her eyes, pressed her palms against them, tried to breathe through the tightness in her chest that felt like drowning on dry land. She had known it was too good to be true. Known that someone like her, a waitress from the West Side with no degree and no connections, didn't just walk into a 6-figure job and succeed. The system didn't work that way. The system protected itself. And people like Richard Kane were the antibodies that attacked anything different, anything that threatened the comfortable order of things. Her phone rang. "David." Elena stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the answer button. Then she let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. This time she answered. "Miss Rodriguez." His voice was tight, controlled, but underneath she heard something that might have been anger or might have been doubt. "Did you do it?" The question was a knife. Elena's throat closed. "No. The evidence is substantial." "Someone set me up," Elena cut in. "Someone who knew exactly how this would look. Someone who's been waiting 6 months for me to fail." Silence on the other end. "Then do you know who?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" Elena closed her eyes. "Not yet." More silence. Then David said something that made her heart stop. "The board wants you fired, prosecuted. They're talking about pressing charges for corporate espionage." "Jesus Christ." "I bought you time," David said. 48 hours. That's all I could get. If you can find proof, real proof, then I can fight for you, but if you can't, He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "David." Elena's voice broke. "I swear on everything I have, I didn't do this." "I believe you." The words were quiet but certain. "Then help me prove it." "I am," he said. "Claire is already digging into the server logs. But, Elena, if this goes wrong, if we can't find evidence, they won't just fire you. They'll destroy you. Make an example. Do you understand?" Elena thought about her sons, about the apartment she had just signed a lease on, the nice one, the safe one, the one she could finally afford, about the future she had started to believe in. "I understand," she said. 48 hours, David repeated. "Don't waste them." He hung up. Elena sat on the bench, phone in her lap, and felt the first tear slide down her cheek. Then another. Then she couldn't stop. People walked past, giving her a wide berth, uncomfortable with public emotion. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. Just like always, Elena Rodriguez was invisible. Except this time she wasn't just invisible. She was guilty. And she had 2 days to prove she wasn't. Maria found her 20 minutes later. Mascara streaked down Elena's face, her whole body shaking in the cold, not even realizing it. Her best friend sat down beside her, put an arm around her shoulders, and said the only thing that mattered. Okay, so we fight. Tell me where we start. They went to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. Maria bought them both coffee and a basket of muffins that neither of them would touch. They sat in a corner booth, Elena's laptop open between them, going through everything she could remember. The timeline, the accusation, the server logs that showed her name, her credentials, her computer accessing files at 2:47 a.m. on a Sunday when she had been at home with her son. This is a professional hit, Maria said, studying the timestamps. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Richard Kane, Elena said. Can you prove it? Not yet. Then we find a way. Elena's phone rang again. David Sterling. She answered, put it on speaker. Claire found something, David said without preamble. We're coming to you. Where are you? Elena gave him the address of the coffee shop. 20 minutes, he said, and hung up. When they arrived, David looked like he hadn't slept. His suit was rumpled, his tie loosened. Claire carried a laptop and a leather case that looked expensive and ominous. They slid into the booth. Maria got up to give them space, but Elena grabbed her hand. Stay, you're part of this. Claire opened her laptop, pulled up security footage. There, Richard Kane entering Elena's office on Thursday night. 11 p.m. The timestamp was clear. He was inside for 18 minutes, Claire said. David leaned forward. We also found badge clone technology purchased on his credit card, same day, and VPN software that would mask an IP address, make it look like it was coming from somewhere else. Elena felt hope flicker in her chest. Then that proves it. We have him. Not exactly, Claire said. He can claim he was dropping off documents. The badge entry isn't proof of malicious intent. The purchases could be explained away as corporate security research. The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. There's more, David said quietly. I've been auditing our finances since this started. Someone's been embezzling. $40 million over 3 years. 40 million? The trail leads to Gerald Morrison, Philip Morrison's son. He's on our board. Elena stared at him. Morrison, like the deal you're trying to close. David nodded. Richard knew about the embezzlement. I think he leaked those documents to tank the Morrison deal deliberately, created a crisis, needed a scapegoat. And you were perfect. Maria whistled low. So this is bigger than just Richard being a racist asshole. Much bigger, David said. If we expose Richard, we expose Gerald. Federal investigation is mandatory. Sterling Tech will be frozen. Stock will crash. 10,000 employees could lose their jobs. Elena felt the weight of what he was saying settle on her shoulders. You're asking me to let this go, she said, to walk away quietly so the company survives. David met her eyes. I'm telling you the stakes. The choice is yours. Elena thought about those 10,000 employees, people with families, mortgages, kids in college just like her sons, people who had done nothing wrong. Then she thought about her sons, who thought their mother was a criminal, about the next woman of color who would get hired here and face the same system, about Richard destroying the next person who dared to succeed. What about my family? Elena said, her voice hard. My sons who think I'm a criminal? What about the next person Richard destroys because no one had the guts to stop him? David didn't answer. You're asking me to be quiet so a broken system can keep breaking people, Elena continued. I've been collateral damage my whole life, David. I'm done being acceptable losses. The silence stretched between them. What do you want to do? David asked finally. We get Richard to confess, Elena said, on tape. Then we use that to leverage Gerald into surrendering quietly, contain the damage but still get justice. You want to blackmail a board member? I want justice. And if that requires playing dirty, then we play dirty. David studied her face for a long moment. You've changed. No, Elena said. I just stopped apologizing for taking up space. Slowly, David smiled. Okay, let's do it. Claire produced the leather case, opened it. Inside was a recording device no bigger than a button. Voice-activated 6-hour battery, she said. Wear it under your collar. Get him talking about the leak, about Morrison, about why he did it. Anything that proves he was involved. When? Elena asked. Tomorrow, Claire said. 6 p.m. There's a bar Richard goes to after work, McGinty's on Wells Street. She pulled out her phone, showing Elena a photo. He'll be alone. He always is on Tuesdays. You've been watching him? Maria asked. I've been watching everyone since this started, Claire said. Her smile was cold. Richard's predictable, arrogant, and he's been drinking more lately, probably feeling guilty or celebrating. Hard to tell with him. David moved toward the door, then stopped. If this goes wrong, if he suspects anything, you get out immediately. Don't push, don't take risks. Richard's dangerous when he's cornered. I can handle Richard Kane, Elena said. David held her gaze for a long moment. I'm sorry for not seeing this coming, for not protecting you. You couldn't have known. I should have. Richard's been undermining people for years. I just thought merit would speak for itself. That good work would be enough. He laughed bitterly. I was naive. You were human, Elena said. After they left, Maria turned to Elena with wide eyes. Girl, your boss just broke into a coffee shop with a spy device and a plan to take down his VP. This is insane. I know. And you're really going to do this? Elena thought about Richard's face when security escorted her out. The satisfaction he had tried to hide. The way he had destroyed her because she dared to succeed. Yeah, she said, I really am. That night, Elena called her sons. Miguel answered on the second ring. Mom, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Elena said, but her voice broke on the words. I just need to hear your voices. Carlos got on the line. They're saying things about you online, he said. About the leak. It's not true, right? Elena closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. It's not true. Someone set me up, and I'm going to prove it. We know you didn't do it, Miguel said. Mom, you're the most honest person we know. Do you need money for a lawyer? Carlos asked. I can withdraw from school this semester, work full-time. No, Elena said firmly, fiercely. No, you stay in school, both of you. I'll fix this. But after she hung up, she sat on her couch and let herself break. Her boys, her beautiful boys, were offering to sacrifice their futures to save her. And she would burn that company to the ground before she let them give up their dreams. Maria stayed over that night, sleeping on the couch. In the morning, they went through the plan again and again until Elena could recite it in her sleep. Approach Richard at the bar, seem defeated, offer a deal. I'll go quietly for a severance package, make him think he won, make him gloat, make him confess. You're asking me to watch my best friend walk into a trap, Maria said. I'm asking you to trust me. Tuesday evening came too fast and too slow at the same time. Elena dressed carefully, not the power suit she had worn to work. Something tired, defeated, a woman who had given up. The recording device went under her collar, a tiny weight that felt like it could drag her under. Sophie called just as Elena was leaving. Miss Elena? Dad said you're in trouble. I'm okay, sweetheart, Elena lied. I don't believe them, Sophie said, her voice fierce. You're the best person I know. You taught me to be brave. Now you have to be brave too, Elena cried after hanging up. Then she wiped her face, straightened her shoulders, and headed for the bar. McGinty's was the kind of place where men went to drink alone. Dark wood, dim lights, bartender who knew when not to make conversation. Elena sat in a corner booth, ordered a glass of wine she had no intention of drinking, and waited. Richard walked in at 6:14. He saw her immediately. For just a second, surprise crossed his face. Then he recovered, arranged his features into concerned surprise, and walked over. Elena, he said, I didn't expect to see you here. Can we talk? Her voice was small, defeated, exactly what she needed it to be. Richard hesitated, then slid into the booth across from her. Of course. How are you holding up? How do you think? Elena laughed, but it came out broken. I'm about to be prosecuted. I can't pay rent. My sons think I'm a criminal. Richard signaled the bartender for a whiskey. I'm sorry, truly. I'm not here to fight, Elena said quickly. I'm here to make a deal. Richard's interest sharpened. What kind of deal? I walk away quietly. No lawyers, no appeals, no press interviews. Elena's hands shook slightly around her wine glass, and it wasn't acting. You get the board to give me 6 months severance and a neutral reference. That's it. That's all I want. Richard leaned back, his whiskey arriving. He took a long sip, watching her carefully. Why would I do that? Because you know I didn't leak those files, Elena said. And I think you know who did. The silence stretched. Richard took another drink. Then slowly he smiled. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Elena's heart pounded. The device was recording every word. So you'll help me? Help you? Richard's smile widened. Elena, I don't need to help you. You're already finished. He took another sip of whiskey, relaxing into it, the alcohol loosening his tongue. I've been at this company 8 years, he said. I have relationships with every board member. I golf with half of them. My father sat on 3 Fortune 500 boards before he retired. I have connections you can't imagine. He leaned forward, his eyes glittering. You're a waitress who got lucky because you fed Sterling's crippled kid one night. Who do you think that they're going to believe? Elena kept her voice steady. So you did set me up. I protected this company from a diversity hire who was bleeding money into useless social programs, Richard said, his voice hardening. The board was too afraid of optics to fire you outright. So I did what needed to be done. You framed me for corporate espionage. I exposed a security risk. Richard's eyes were cold now, all pretense gone. And you know what? Morrison pulled their contract this morning. $200 million gone. Because someone leaked our bidding strategy. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. The board needed a scapegoat. And you were perfect. The outsider. The one who never really belonged anyway. It was almost too easy. Elena's hands clenched under the table. You destroyed my life for a business deal. I saved this company, Richard said. And honestly, Elena, you should thank me. You were never going to make it here anyway. People like you don't belong in boardrooms. You belong in diners, serving coffee to people who actually matter. He stood up, dropped a $20 bill on the table. Drinks are on me, he said. Consider it severance. Then he walked out. Elena sat frozen, the recording device still running, capturing the ambient noise of the bar. Her phone buzzed. Text from Claire. Got it. Every word. Get out of there now. Elena stood on shaking legs and walked out into the cold Chicago night. 3 blocks away, David's car was waiting. She climbed into the back seat where Claire was already downloading the audio file. We got him, Claire said, her voice tight with satisfaction. That arrogant bastard confessed to everything. Elena leaned her head back against the seat, adrenaline crashing through her system like a drug wearing off. What happens now? She asked. David, sitting in the front passenger seat, turned to look at her. Now, he said, his voice hard as stone, we bury him. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 a.m. the next morning. Elena sat in David's car outside Sterling Technologies, watching employees stream into the building. Her stomach churned. You don't have to do this, David said quietly from the driver's seat. I can present the evidence myself. No, Elena said. Her voice was steady despite her shaking hands. I need to face them. I need to watch Richard's face when they hear what he said. Claire turned from the front passenger seat. The board's already heard a preview of the recording. Jessica Chen called me at midnight. She sounded shaken. Good, Elena said. They walked in together, David, Claire, and Elena. The lobby went silent. Employees stared. Elena kept her head high, her shoulders back, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. The 52nd floor boardroom was oak and leather and power. 12 board members sat around a massive table. Richard was already there, positioned near the head, looking confident. When Elena walked in, his face went pale. What is she doing here? Richard demanded. She's suspended. Sit down, Richard, the voice came from Thomas Whitmore, the board chairman. 70 years old, silver hair, the kind of man who had built empires and buried enemies. Richard sat. David gestured for Elena to take the empty seat directly across from Richard. Claire set up a laptop at the head of the table. Gentlemen, David said, and nodded toward Patricia Mills, the one female board member. And Miss Mills, thank you for convening on such short notice. 2 days ago, Elena Rodriguez was suspended based on evidence suggesting she leaked confidential information to the press. That evidence appeared conclusive. He paused. It was also completely fabricated. Richard's lawyer, a sharp-eyed man in a gray suit, leaned forward. Mr. Sterling, these are serious allegations. They're facts, David said, nodding at Claire. Claire pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room, tinny through the laptop speakers but unmistakable. I protected this company from a diversity hire who was bleeding money into useless social programs. The board was too afraid of the optics to fire you outright, so I did what needed to be done. I exposed a security risk. The color drained from Richard's face. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The recording continued. Morrison pulled their contract this morning. $200 million gone because someone leaked our bidding strategy. The board needed a scapegoat, and you were perfect. The outsider who never really fit. It was almost too easy. When it finished, the silence was absolute. Thomas Whitmore removed his glasses slowly, cleaned them with a handkerchief, put them back on. "Richard," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Would you like to explain?" "That recording was obtained illegally," Richard's lawyer jumped in, "without Mr. Kane's consent. It's inadmissible in court." "In court, perhaps," Whitmore said coldly, "but this isn't a court. This is my boardroom. And I just heard one of my executives admit to corporate sabotage and framing an employee." He turned to Richard. "Did you or did you not leak those documents?" Richard's jaw worked. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "I was trying to protect the company," he said finally. "That's not what I asked." "The community programs were hemorrhaging money," Richard said, his voice rising. "She was pushing us towards social responsibility initiatives that alienated our core partners. Morrison specifically complained about our woke direction. I made a business decision." "You committed fraud," Jessica Chen interjected sharply. "You accessed confidential files without authorization. You framed a colleague for corporate espionage. And by your own admission, you cost this company a $200 million contract." Richard stood up. "This isn't over. My father will hear about this." "Your father," Whitmore said, "will be ashamed when I call him this afternoon." He looked at David. "What do you recommend?" "Immediate termination," David said. "Full criminal investigation, civil suit for damages, and a public statement making clear that Ms. Rodriguez was wrongfully accused and that Sterling Technologies does not tolerate discrimination or retaliation in any form." Richard lunged across the table at Elena. David stepped between them faster than Elena would have thought possible. "Touch her," David said, his voice deadly quiet, "and you'll never work again. Anywhere." Security officers arrived. Richard was still screaming as they escorted him from the room. "You can't do this. She doesn't belong here. You're all afraid to say it." The door closed, cutting off his voice. Elena sat heavily, adrenaline crashing. Her whole body trembled. Whitmore turned to her. "Miss Rodriguez, do you have anything you'd like to say?" Elena stood slowly. Every eye in the room turned to her. "I want my job back," she said. And as she spoke, her voice grew stronger. "Not because I need your approval, but because the communities we serve need someone in this room who actually sees them as human beings." She paused. "Richard was right about one thing. I am a waitress. I served coffee and sandwiches for 15 years. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to work yourself to exhaustion and still not make rent. That's exactly why you need me. Because every decision made in this room affects thousands of people who will never sit at this table. People who just want to feed their kids and believe that the companies taking their labor actually give a damn about them. So yes, I want my job back as Vice President of Social Impact, with a seat on this board and full authority to rebuild the programs Richard destroyed. Otherwise, I walk. And I take this recording to every news outlet in America." Whitmore's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Miss Mills, call a vote." The vote was 11-1. Richard's lawyer voted no. Everyone else raised their hands. "Motion carries," Whitmore said. "Welcome back, Miss Rodriguez." After the board members filed out, Elena sat alone for a moment. Then Claire came over, squeezed her shoulder. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Elena corrected. David stood by the window looking out at Chicago. "Thank you," he said without turning around, "for not giving up." Elena walked over to stand beside him. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Wait until you see what I'm about to do to your next quarterly budget." David laughed, a real laugh, the first she had heard from him in all these months. And Elena understood, looking out at the city spread below them, that she hadn't just won her job back. She had changed the rules of the game. The press conference was held in the lobby of Sterling Technologies at 10 a.m., 2 hours after the board meeting that had changed everything. Camera flashes erupted like small explosions as Elena and David approached the podium. Behind them, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline. The city stretched out like a promise being kept. David stepped to the microphone first. His voice was steady, clear, the voice of a man who had made a decision and would not waver from it. "Today we expose corruption at the highest levels of our company. We're cooperating fully with federal investigation. Elena Rodriguez was wrongfully accused. She's been reinstated as Vice President of Social Impact with a full seat on our board of directors." The reporters erupted with questions, hands shooting up, voices overlapping. "What about the Morrison deal?" "We'll find partners who share our values," David said. A reporter turned to Elena. How does it feel to be vindicated? Elena stepped forward. The microphone felt heavy in her hand. She thought about the walk of shame 2 days ago, security at her elbows, 200 employees watching her fall. She thought about her sons offering to sacrifice their futures, about Sophie crying on the phone, insisting Elena was the best person she knew. It feels like justice, Elena said, but I want to be clear. This isn't about me. It's about every employee who's been silenced, every community member who's been ignored, every person who's been told they don't belong. Today, we're saying you do belong, and we're going to prove it. The cameras flashed again, but this time Elena didn't flinch. Back in Elena's office, her name restored to the door plaque in letters that caught the light. The women gathered. Claire Morrison, Diane Foster, Patricia Mills, and Maria Santos, who had driven straight from the diner when she heard the news. Champagne appeared, Claire having thought ahead, always prepared for either victory or defeat. Maria raised her glass. To the baddest women in Chicago. They drank, and Elena tasted relief and exhaustion and something that might have been hope. I want to join your team officially, Patricia said, head of legal for community programs. Elena nodded. Welcome aboard. I want to restructure PR to focus on authentic engagement, Diane added. Not spin, real connection with real people. And I'd like to launch a mentorship program for women employees, Claire said. Teach them how to fight back when the Richards of the world come for them. Elena looked at the 4 women standing in her office, women who had risked their careers to stand with her, and felt something shift in her chest. We're not just fixing one company, she said. We're building a blueprint, showing other women how to do this, how to survive, how to win. That night, Elena went home to her apartment, the one she could still afford now, the leash she wouldn't have to break. She called her sons. Miguel answered. Mom, we've been watching the news. I won, Elena said, and her voice broke on the words. Baby, I won. She heard Carlos whooping in the background, heard Miguel's voice thick with tears. We never doubted you, Miguel said, not for 1 second. After she hung up, Elena sat on her couch and cried, not from sadness or fear or rage, but from relief so profound it felt like being hollowed out and filled up at the same time. The federal investigation moved quickly once the evidence was laid out. Richard Kane was arrested 3 days after the board meeting. The news footage showed him being escorted from his downtown apartment in handcuffs, photographers shouting questions he wouldn't answer. Gerald Morrison surrendered himself the following week. His father, Philip Morrison, released a terse statement disavowing his son's actions and stepping down from all board positions at Morrison International. The trial took 6 months. Richard's lawyer tried every angle, claimed the recording was inadmissible, argued entrapment, suggested that Richard had been acting in the company's best interest. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Richard Kane was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2 million in restitution. Gerald Morrison got 8 years and had to return the full $40 million he had stolen. Elena watched the sentencing from the gallery, David beside her, Claire on her other side. When the judge read the verdict, Elena felt something release in her chest. Not joy, not even satisfaction, just the simple certainty that justice, for once, had actually been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded them. Miss Rodriguez, how do you feel about the verdict? Elena looked at the cameras, thinking about all the women watching who had been told they were too much or not enough, who had been pushed out of rooms they had earned the right to enter. I feel like we proved something today, she said, that the system can work if we force it to, that speaking up matters, that fighting back matters. She paused, then added, and I hope every Richard Kane in every boardroom in America is watching, because we're coming for you next. The clip went viral within an hour. 6 months after the board meeting, Sterling Technologies had transformed. Not overnight, not magically, but deliberately, painfully, like a bone healing after being broken. The diversity numbers climbed. Women in leadership went from 15% to 40%. People of color in management tripled. The community programs expanded to 5 cities, then 8, then 12. The stock price, which analysts had predicted would crash, rose 30%. Investors, it turned out, rewarded transparency and authentic community engagement more than they rewarded corruption dressed up as shareholder value. Elena's office was no longer modest. She had moved to the 52nd floor corner office, windows that looked out over the city she was helping to reshape. Her desk held three things: a photo of her sons, Sophie's drawing from that first office visit, and a framed quote she had written herself. Belonging is not given, it is claimed. David had changed too. He worked fewer hours, took Sundays completely off, spent them with Sophie. He still carried the weight of running a multi-billion-dollar company, but he no longer carried it alone. The board meetings now included Elena's voice, Patricia's legal expertise, Diane's authentic communication strategies. Decisions were slower but better, informed by people who actually understood the communities Sterling Tech served. And Sophie. Sophie was transforming in ways that made Elena's heart ache with pride. The wheelchair was gone now, replaced by forearm crutches decorated with stickers and glitter, and the names of everyone Sophie loved written in permanent marker. Elena's name was there, right at the top, surrounded by stars. Physical therapy 3 times a week. A new doctor who specialized in cerebral palsy and actually listened when Sophie talked about her goals. Swimming lessons in an adaptive pool. Art classes where her paintings were starting to win awards. One afternoon, Sophie wheeled herself into Elena's office, and Elena noticed immediately that she was using only one crutch. "Look," Sophie said, her face glowing. "Dr. Sanders says I might be able to walk without any help by next year, just for short distances." But still, Elena knelt down, pulled Sophie into a hug. "That's incredible, sweetheart. Dad bought me a bike," Sophie continued, words tumbling out in excitement. "It's got 3 wheels and special handles. We go riding in the park every Sunday. He takes the whole morning off. No phone calls, no emails, just us." Elena looked up to find David standing in her doorway, watching them with an expression she had never seen before. Peace, maybe, or something close to it. That evening, David lingered after Sophie had gone home with Claire. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "You've thanked me 100 times. Not for this." David gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. "For giving me my daughter back. For teaching me how to be present." Elena shook her head. "That was you doing the work, David. With your example," he said. "Every time I want to hide in my office, I think about you. About how you saw a scared kid in the rain and didn't hesitate, didn't make excuses, just acted." He paused, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. "Sophie talks about you all the time. She calls you her hero." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "She's mine too." The community centers were the work Elena was most proud of. Not the boardroom victories or the press coverage or even Richard's conviction, but the actual tangible change happening in neighborhoods that looked like the one she grew up in. The Southside Center had served 300 families in its first 6 months, job training programs with an 85% placement rate, free childcare so mothers could actually attend classes, healthcare clinic providing primary care to people who had been using emergency rooms for everything because they had no other option. The stories came back to Elena in letters, in emails, in tearful phone calls from women whose lives had changed. Patricia Williams, 62, who had been sleeping in her car with her daughter Jasmine. The center got Jasmine into the clinic for her asthma, got Patricia into a coding boot camp, helped them find housing. Jasmine graduated high school, first in her family, heading to community college on a scholarship Elena had personally helped her apply for. James Rivera, 45, construction worker injured on the job. The retraining program taught him software development. Now he worked from home, made more money than he ever had, and was there when his kids got home from school. Carmen, 19, single mother, high school dropout. Elena had hired her as a waitress at Rosie's Diner, then gotten her into the GED program. Now she was starting community college, her daughter in the center's daycare, her future opening up in ways she had never imagined possible. Each story was a life changed. Each life changed was a family lifted. Each family lifted was a community strengthened. This was the return on investment that mattered, the kind that could not be measured in quarterly reports, but could be seen in children's eyes when their mothers came home with paychecks instead of despair. 1 year after the rainy night that had changed everything, Elena stood on an empty lot in South Chicago, a shovel in her hand, cameras watching. Beside her stood David, both of them in hard hats and work clothes, looking slightly ridiculous and completely sincere. The sign behind them read Rodriguez Sterling Community Center, opening fall 2024, $50 million, 4 floors. job training, healthcare, childcare. And the top floor, Sophie's floor, dedicated entirely to services for children with disabilities. 500 community members attended the groundbreaking ceremony. Elena saw faces she recognized from the diner, from the neighborhood where she grew up, from the street she used to walk with her head down and her hopes small. Mrs. Henderson was there, the teacher who had told Elena she was smart enough for college when her guidance counselor said she should just get a job. Elena had made sure she got a front row seat. "This woman," Elena said, gesturing to Mrs. Henderson, "told me I mattered when I was 9 years old. When everyone else said I should aim lower, she said aim higher. This center is for every Mrs. Henderson who sees potential in kids everyone else has written off." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, a woman approached Elena, mid-60s, tired eyes, wearing a McDonald's uniform. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Patricia Williams. I wanted to thank you." Elena recognized the name, the woman from the car, the one with the daughter who had asthma. Patricia pulled out her phone, showed Elena a photo. A young woman in a graduation cap and gown, grinning at the camera. "That's my Jasmine. Graduated last month. First person in our family." Patricia's voice broke. "You saved our lives. 2 years ago we had nothing. Now she's in college. I've got a job that pays the bills. We've got an apartment. You gave us hope when we had none left." Elena hugged her, this stranger who was not a stranger, whose story was woven into the larger tapestry of what they were building. "You did the work," Elena said. "I just opened a door. You walked through it." "That's what you don't understand," Patricia said. "For people like us, nobody opens doors. You have to break them down or go without. You opened it. That makes all the difference." The expansion was announced 3 months later. 20 new Rodriguez Sterling centers across America: Detroit, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Houston. Cities where communities had been neglected, extracted from, treated as obstacles instead of partners. $500 million over 5 years. 10,000 jobs created. 50,000 families served annually. David stood at the podium, Elena beside him, announcing what would become his legacy. "We're not doing this because it's good PR," he said. "We're doing it because it's right, because companies have a responsibility to the communities they operate in, because profit and purpose are not opposites." He turned to Elena. "And because one woman showed me that caring about people is not weakness. It's the strongest thing there is." The Jennifer Sterling Memorial Scholarship was David's idea. $20 million for students with disabilities who wanted to go to college. Full rides, no questions asked, just proof of potential and a dream worth funding. The announcement was made at a ceremony where Sophie stood beside her father, placing a flower at a photo of her mother. "Mom believed everyone deserves a chance," Sophie said, her voice clear and strong. "This is her legacy, and mine." Elena watched from the audience, David's words echoing in her head. "We're not just changing a company, we're changing what's possible." 2 years after that rainy night, Elena sat in Rosie's diner at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, serving coffee to regulars who had known her when she was just Elena the waitress, before she became Elena Rodriguez VP, before her face appeared in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Patterson was there, 80 now, still nursing his decaf. Hands steadier than they used to be because the community center had connected him with a neurologist who actually listened. Carmen worked the counter beside her, no longer the scared 19-year-old dropout, but a community college student with a 3.8 GPA and plans to transfer to a 4-year school. "Why do you still do this?" Carmen asked, wiping down the counter. "You're a vice president. You could hire someone." Elena poured coffee, the ritual as familiar as breathing. "Because this is where I learned to see people, where I learned that everyone matters. And I never want to forget what it feels like to be the person serving, the person hoping someone sees you." Mr. Patterson spoke up from his booth. "She changed the world, you know, but she still makes the best coffee in Chicago." Elena's phone buzzed. Sophie, calling from her Saturday art class. "Miss Elena, guess what? My painting won first place." That's amazing, sweetheart. What did you paint?" "You and me, in the rain, the night everything changed." Elena felt her throat tighten. "I'm so proud of you." "Can we celebrate?" Sophie asked. "You, me, and Dad? Pizza at Mario's?" "Absolutely, I'll bring dessert." "And maybe," Sophie said, her voice turning serious, "we can talk about my blog. I'm writing about disability rights and I want your advice." "Always, baby, always." After hanging up, Elena looked around the diner. The cracked vinyl booths, the flickering neon sign, the coffee pot that had been brewing the same recipe for 30 years. This place had been her beginning. And even now, with corner offices and board meetings and press conferences, it remained her anchor. "You know what I think?" Carmen said, watching Elena with wise eyes. "I think you keep coming back because you want to remember where you started, so you don't lose yourself in where you're going." Elena smiled. "You're going to make a hell of a social worker, Carmen." I learned from the best. That afternoon, Elena drove to Lincoln Elementary School, Sophie's 5th grade graduation. The auditorium was packed with parents jockeying for position with cameras and phones, everyone wanting the perfect shot of their child's moment. Elena sat in the back with David and Maria, watching as children filed onto the stage in caps and gowns slightly too big, faces shining with pride and nervousness. And there, 3rd row from the front, was Sophie, 10 years old now, taller, stronger, hair pulled back in a neat braid, and walking, not in a wheelchair, not even with crutches, just a single decorative cane for balance, covered in the same stickers and glitter that had decorated her crutches. Elena's breath caught. The principal began calling names. Each child walked or rolled or hobbled across the stage to receive their diploma, and the applause was thunderous, democratic, celebrating each kid equally. When they called Sophie's name, the girl made her way to center stage with careful, determined steps. She took her diploma with one hand, balancing with the cane, then turned to face the audience. "Can I say something?" Her voice was small but clear through the microphone. The principal looked surprised but nodded. Sophie cleared her throat. "I want to thank my dad for being here for everything now, for teaching me that it's okay to be scared and do things anyway." David's hand found Elena's, squeezed once. His eyes were wet. "And I want to thank Miss Elena Rodriguez." Sophie's eyes found Elena in the crowd. "I don't know if she's here, but if she is, I want her to know something." Elena stood up slightly, just enough to be seen. Sophie's face lit up. "There you are. Miss Elena saved my life 2 years ago. She taught my dad how to be a dad again. She taught me that being different doesn't mean being less. And she taught both of us that kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is." The applause started scattered, then built, then became a standing ovation. Elena was crying, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except this moment, this child, this impossible, beautiful proof that one act of kindness could change everything. After the ceremony, Sophie ran to Elena. Actually ran, stumbling a little, laughing as she threw her arms around Elena's waist. "Did you see no crutches?" "I saw, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Sophie pulled back, her face serious now. "I'm writing a book about my life, about you, about how one person caring can change everything." David appeared, placing a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "We were thinking," he said, "maybe we could call it The Night Everything Changed." Elena looked at them. This father and daughter who had been broken and were healing, who had taught her as much as she had taught them. "I think that's perfect," she said. That night, back at her apartment, Elena sat on her couch with Maria, both of them exhausted and happy and full of pizza from the celebration. "You did good, Hermana," Maria said. "We did good," Elena corrected. "None of this happens without you." Maria shook her head. "All I did was drive you places and make tamales. You're the one who changed the world. You showed up," Elena said. "Every single time. When I was nobody, when I was somebody, when I was accused of crimes I didn't commit. You showed up. That's everything." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from 20 years of friendship, from knowing someone through the best and worst moments of their lives. "So what's next?" Maria asked. "You've got the board seat. The programs are expanding. Richard's in prison. What mountain do you climb now?" Elena thought about Patricia Williams and her daughter heading to college, about James Rivera working from home, being there for his kids, about Carmen starting community college, about Sophie running across a stage with just a cane for balance. "More of this," Elena said. "Bigger, better, until every community has access to what they need, until belonging isn't something you have to fight for, until the system actually works for everyone, not just the people who look like they belong." Maria raised her glass of wine. "To more of this, then." They clinked glasses, and Elena felt it again, that sense of purpose that had driven her to run into the rain 2 years ago, that refusal to look away when someone needed help, The world was full of Sophies sitting alone in the rain, waiting for someone to see them. And Elena was going to make sure someone always did. 2 months later, the flagship Rodriguez Sterling Community Center opened its doors. 4 floors of possibility in the neighborhood where Elena had grown up, where she had learned to keep her head down and her dreams small. The opening ceremony drew 1,000 people. News cameras, city officials, community leaders, and hundreds of ordinary people, the ones the center was actually built for. Elena stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and saw her whole life reflected back at her. Mrs. Henderson in the front row, Patricia Williams and her daughter Jasmine, Carmen and her baby, Mr. Patterson from the diner, Maria crying openly, David and Sophie holding hands. "This building represents a $50 million investment," Elena said. "But that's not what makes it special. What makes it special is what happens inside." She gestured to the building behind her. On the first floor, job training, free programs for anyone who needs them. On the second floor, childcare, free, high-quality childcare so parents can work or go back to school without worrying. Third floor, healthcare clinic, free primary care, mental health services, physical therapy. Elena's voice strengthened. And the fourth floor is dedicated to kids with disabilities, adaptive technology, tutoring, sports programs, everything Sophie needed when she was 8 years old, and everything we're going to make sure every kid in this community has access to. The applause was deafening. David stepped forward. 5 years ago, I thought success meant building a billion-dollar company. I thought power meant having the biggest office and the most impressive title. He paused. I was wrong. Elena taught me that real power is using your resources to lift others up. Real success is measured by how many lives you change, not how much money you make. Sophie wheeled forward, and Elena saw that she had chosen to use her wheelchair today. A choice, not a necessity. A reminder of where she had started. "This center is for everyone who's ever felt invisible," Sophie said. "For everyone who's been told they can't. For everyone who's been left behind." She looked directly at Elena. "Miss Elena saw me when I was invisible. Now it's our turn to see everyone else." When the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Elena stayed behind, walking through the empty building. 4 floors of possibility, 4 floors of hope, 4 floors of proof that the system could be changed if you were willing to fight for it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Miss Rodriguez, this is Richard Kane." Elena froze. She hadn't heard his voice in 18 months. Not since the sentencing. Not since he was led away in handcuffs. "I'm calling from prison," he continued. "I wanted to say something." Elena waited. "I'm sorry for what I did to you. For what I did to Marcus Williams before you. For every person I undermined because their success threatened my fragile ego." Elena closed her eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because my therapist says I need to take responsibility. Because I have 4 years left and I want to be different when I get out. Because you were right about everything and I was wrong." A pause. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know you won. Not just the job or the conviction. You won because you proved that doing the right thing matters. That fighting back matters." "Thank you," Elena said quietly, "for saying that." After hanging up, Elena stood in the empty center, in the building that existed because she had refused to accept that people like her didn't belong in boardrooms, and felt something release. Forgiveness maybe, or just peace. The work wasn't done, would never be done. There would always be more communities to serve, more people to lift up, more systems to change. But today, in this moment, in this building that carried her name and her values, and her unshakable belief that everyone mattered, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself to feel what she had earned. Victory, not over Richard, not over the system, but over the voice that had whispered her whole life that she was not enough, that she should aim lower, that she did not belong. She belonged, she had always belonged, and she was just getting started. 2 years after the night that changed everything, Elena Rodriguez stood at her office window on the 52nd floor of Sterling Technologies and watched the sun rise over Chicago. The city spread below her like a painting, all glass and steel and possibility, and she could trace the map of change in the neighborhoods below. South Side, where the flagship Rodriguez Sterling Center now served 500 families a month. West Side, where the second center had just broken ground. Bronzeville, where a third was being designed by community members themselves, not imposed from above but built from the ground up. 24 centers now, across 12 cities, 100,000 families served. The numbers were staggering, but Elena knew they were just numbers until you put faces to them, stories, lives that had been changed in ways both small and profound. Her phone buzzed. Sophie, texting from her bedroom at David's penthouse 3 blocks away. "Good morning, Miss Elena. Dad says I can't have ice cream for breakfast. Please tell him I'm 10 now and can make my own nutritional decisions." Elena smiled, typed back. "Your dad is right, but I'll bring you a cupcake tonight at dinner. Deal?" 3 heart emojis appeared in response. 10 years old. Sophie was 10 now, and the transformation was something Elena still marveled at every time she saw the girl. Not just the physical changes, though those were remarkable. The wheelchair gone completely, donated to another child who needed it. The crutches retired to a place of honor in Sophie's bedroom, decorated now with medals from adaptive swim meets and certificates from art competitions. But it was the internal changes that made Elena's heart swell. The confidence, the voice that no longer whispered but proclaimed. The girl who had asked if her father loved her now wrote blog posts read by 50,000 people about disability rights and the power of being seen. The intercom on Elena's desk crackled, Claire's voice warm and familiar. "Staff meeting in 10. And heads up, Patricia has the budget reports." She's excited, which means either very good news or she's finally lost it. Elena grabbed her coffee and her tablet and headed to the conference room. The executive team had changed so much in 2 years, it sometimes felt like a different company entirely. Richard's chair, the one he had occupied with such arrogance, now belonged to Michael Chen, James's younger brother, who had come up through community organizing and understood that profit and purpose were not enemies but partners. Diane Foster sat at the head of communications. Her PR no longer spin, but authentic storytelling about real impact. Patricia Mills ran legal with a focus on protecting communities, not just the company. And Claire Morrison, David's right hand for so many years, had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer, the first woman to hold that position at Sterling Technologies. The meeting was routine until Patricia pulled up the quarterly impact report, the screen filled with graphs and charts. But what caught Elena's attention were the photographs embedded between the data points. A woman in her 60s standing in front of a house, keys in her hand, tears on her face. Caption: Maria Gonzalez, formerly homeless, now a homeowner after completing our job training program. A young man in a graduation cap and gown, prosthetic leg visible beneath his gown. Caption: James Porter, first in his family to graduate college, recipient of the Jennifer Sterling Memorial Scholarship. A little girl, maybe 6, using a walker decorated with butterfly stickers, grinning at the camera. Caption: Amelia Chen, receiving physical therapy at Rodriguez Sterling Center Westside location. "These are the returns that matter," Patricia said quietly. "The ones that don't fit on a balance sheet." The room was silent for a moment. Then David spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "When Elena first walked into this building 2 years ago, I thought I was doing her a favor, giving someone a chance." He shook his head. "Turns out she was doing us the favor, showing us what we could be if we had the courage to actually care." Elena felt her throat tighten. The meeting continued, budget allocations and expansion plans and the mundane mechanics of running programs that changed lives. But her mind drifted to all the moments that had led here. After Morrison International collapsed, David added, "We partnered with 3 smaller manufacturers who share our values. The combined contracts exceed what Morrison offered, and the relationships are stronger." Elena nodded. It had taken 6 months to rebuild after the Morrison disaster, but they had emerged better for it. That afternoon, Elena drove to the Southside Center. She did this at least once a week, sometimes more, because she never wanted to lose touch with the work happening on the ground. The building rose 4 stories, beautiful in its functionality, windows that let in light, ramps that welcomed everyone, art on the walls painted by the children who came here for after-school programs. Inside, the lobby buzzed with activity. Mothers dropping off children at the daycare, a coding class in session in the computer lab, the smell of food from the culinary training program on the 2nd floor, teaching people not just to cook, but to run restaurants, to build businesses, to dream bigger than survival. Elena walked through the halls, greeting people by name. Mrs. Henderson was there, volunteering as a tutor, the teacher who had told a 9-year-old Elena that she was smart enough for college, now helping other children believe the same about themselves. In the physical therapy room on the 4th floor, Sophie's floor, Elena found what she had come looking for. A little boy, maybe 7, working with a therapist on parallel bars. His legs thin and uncertain, struggling to hold his weight, his face fierce with determination. The therapist saw Elena and smiled. "This is Marcus. He's been asking about you." The boy's head snapped up. "Miss Elena?" Elena walked over, crouched down to his level. "Hey there, Marcus. I heard you're doing amazing work here." "I walked 10 steps yesterday," he said, pride radiating from every word. "By myself. No help." That's incredible. "My mom says you made this place, that you help people like me." "I helped start it," Elena said. "But the people who work here are the ones who do the real helping, and you're the one doing the real work. Can I show you something?" Marcus let go of the parallel bars and took 3 wobbling steps toward Elena before his legs gave out. She caught him, steadied him, felt the trembling in his small body that came from pushing past limits. "That was amazing," Elena said and meant it. "I'm going to walk across the whole room," Marcus said. "Maybe not today, but soon." "I believe you," Elena told him. "And when you do, I want to be here to see it." Driving back to the office, Elena thought about Marcus and Sophie, and all the children whose lives had been changed because someone had invested in possibility, instead of writing them off as too expensive, too difficult, too different. Her phone rang. "Maria." "Where are you?" "Heading back from Southside." "Why?" "Because you promised me lunch 2 weeks ago and I'm cashing in." "Rosie's. 1 hour." Elena laughed. "I'll be there." The diner looked exactly as it had 2 years ago. Same cracked vinyl booths, same flickering neon sign, same smell of coffee and bacon grease and comfort food that filled empty stomachs and sometimes empty hearts. Maria was already there, commandeering their usual booth, 2 cups of coffee waiting. "So," Maria said as Elena slid in across from her, "when are you going to tell me you're exhausted?" "I'm fine." "You're running a $50 million foundation, serving on a corporate board, expanding to 24 cities, and you still work here every Sunday morning. You're not fine. You're superhuman or crazy, maybe both." Elena took a sip of coffee. It tasted like home. "I can't stop, Maria. There's too much to do." "There will always be too much to do." Maria's voice softened. "The question is whether you're going to be around to do it if you burn yourself out." Elena looked at her best friend, the woman who had stood by her through everything, and felt the weight she had been carrying settle heavier on her shoulders. "I'm scared," Elena admitted. "Scared that if I slow down it all stops, that everything we built falls apart." "Hermana," Maria reached across the table, took Elena's hand. "You built systems. You built a team. You built something bigger than yourself. It doesn't fall apart if you take a breath." "I don't know how to take a breath," Elena said, and realized it was true. "Then learn," Maria said firmly, "because Sophie needs you. David needs you. This community needs you. And they need you whole, not burned out and broken." Elena nodded, blinking back tears. "Okay, I'll try." "Good. Now eat your burger before it gets cold." That night, Elena had dinner with David and Sophie at their penthouse. It had become a weekly ritual, Thursday nights, the 3 of them cooking together in David's kitchen that cost more than most people's houses, but felt warm and lived in because Sophie's drawings covered the refrigerator, and David's terrible attempts at baking left flour on every surface. Sophie was making pasta, her specialty now, standing at the stove with the confidence of someone who had learned that her body was capable of more than anyone had thought possible. "Miss Elena," Sophie said, stirring the sauce, "I need to talk to you about something." Elena exchanged a glance with David, who shrugged. "What's up, sweetheart?" "I got invited to speak at a conference about disability rights, in front of 500 people." Sophie turned from the stove, her face a mixture of excitement and terror. "And I'm scared. What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing?" Elena set down her wine glass, walked over to Sophie. "You know what I do when I'm scared before a big speech?" "What?" "I remember that the fear means it matters. If you weren't scared, it would mean you didn't care. The fear is proof that you do." Sophie considered this. "So being scared is okay?" "Being scared is human," Elena said. "Being brave is doing it anyway." "You taught me that," Sophie said. "That night in the rain. You were scared, weren't you? Taking in some random kid you didn't know." "Terrified," Elena admitted. but you needed help. And sometimes that's all that matters. Sophie hugged her, fierce and tight. Thank you for everything. Over dinner, David shared news about the company's expansion, new partnerships, more funding for the community programs, a proposal to take the Rodriguez Sterling model national, maybe even global. We're talking about 50 cities in 5 years, he said. $100 million in investment. Elena felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the possibility. That's a lot of lives, she said. That's the point, David replied. You showed us it was possible. Now we're just scaling it. I'm one person, Elena said. I can't be everywhere. You don't have to be, David said gently. You built a team. You created a blueprint. Other people can execute it. That's what leadership is. Building something that outlasts you. After dinner, Sophie showed Elena her latest blog post, the one she would publish tomorrow. It was about the night in the rain, about being seen when you felt invisible, about how one moment of kindness could change the trajectory of a life. It ended with a question for readers. Who can you see today? Who can you help? Who can you remind that they matter? This is beautiful, sweetheart, Elena said, reading it on Sophie's laptop. I want people to understand, Sophie said, that they have power, that anyone can change someone's life if they just pay attention. You're going to change the world, Elena told her. Sophie smiled. I learned from the best. The next morning, Elena kept her promise to Maria and took a day off. A full day, no emails, no meetings, no site visits, just her, a book she had been meaning to read for 6 months, and a park bench in Grant Park where she could watch the city move around her. She lasted 3 hours before the restlessness set in. Her phone rang. She had promised not to answer work calls, but the number was the Southside Center. She picked up. Miss Rodriguez, this is Keisha from the front desk. I'm sorry to bother you on your day off. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But there's a woman here. She's asking for you specifically. Says she needs to thank you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The woman waiting in the lobby was familiar in the way that all the mothers Elena had met over the past 2 years were familiar. Tired eyes, work uniform, hands that had scrubbed and lifted and fought for every dollar. But there was something else, too. A light that hadn't been there before. Miss Rodriguez, the woman said, standing up, I'm Joyce Miller. You don't know me, but you changed my daughter's life. Elena gestured to a quiet corner, 2 chairs by the window. Tell me. Joyce pulled out her phone, showed Elena a photo. A young woman in a doctor's coat, stethoscope around her neck, smiling at the camera. That's my daughter, Alicia. She's a resident now at Northwestern, pediatrics. Elena studied the photo, the pride in the young woman's eyes, the white coat that represented years of struggle and sacrifice and dreams deferred. 2 years ago, we had nothing, Joyce continued. I was working 3 jobs. Alicia was at community college, about to drop out because we couldn't afford books. She got into the job training program here, got a scholarship from your foundation, and now she's a doctor. Joyce's voice broke. She's going to save lives. My daughter is going to save children's lives. And none of that happens without you. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You did the work. You raised her. You sacrificed. But you gave us hope, Joyce said. When we had none, you showed us a different ending was possible. After Joyce left, Elena sat in that corner for a long time, watching people move through the center. Mothers picking up children from daycare. Job training graduates in their new work clothes, heading to first days at new jobs. Physical therapy patients working on parallel bars, fighting for every step. This was the return on investment that Richard Kane had never understood, that shareholders focused only on quarterly reports would never see. The unmeasurable value of human potential unlocked, of dreams given room to grow, of communities rebuilt from the inside out. Elena's phone buzzed. Sophie, posting her blog. Within an hour, it had been shared 5,000 times. That Sunday morning, Elena opened Rosie's Diner at 6 a.m., just like she had for the past 2 years, just like she would for as long as she could hold a coffee pot and remember why this work mattered. Mr. Patterson was the first customer through the door, 82 now, still ordering decaf, still the last to leave. Carmen worked the counter beside Elena, community college diploma framed on the wall behind them. Acceptance letter to the University of Illinois for her bachelor's degree, tucked in her apron pocket like a talisman. A young woman came in around 7, late 20s, carrying a baby on her hip and uncertainty in her eyes. She slid into a booth, ordered just coffee. Elena poured it, Noticed the woman hadn't ordered food. Noticed the way her hands trembled slightly. Noticed the baby's diaper bag, so worn and patched, but clean. You hungry? Elena asked gently. The woman shook her head. Just coffee's fine. Elena went to the kitchen, made eggs and toast and bacon, brought it out with the coffee. On the house, she said. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I can't pay for this. I'm not asking you to, Elena said. I'm asking you to eat. The woman did, the baby gurgling on her lap, and halfway through the meal she started talking. Lost her job last month, behind on rent, afraid of losing her apartment, no family to help, no idea what to do next. Elena listened, really listened, the way someone had listened to her so many years ago, when she was the one who didn't know how she would pay rent or feed her kids. When the woman finished eating, Elena gave her a card. Rodriguez Sterling Community Center, address on South Side. You go there tomorrow, Elena said. Ask for Patricia Mills. Tell her Elena sent you. They've got job training, childcare while you're in class, help with rent if you need it. The woman stared at the card like it was a winning lottery ticket. Why are you helping me? Because someone helped me once when I needed it, Elena said, and now it's my turn to help you. That's how it works. After the woman left, Carmen came over, refilled Elena's coffee cup. You do that every week, she said. Find someone who needs help, make sure they get it. Elena shrugged. This is where I learned to see people, where someone saw me. I'm just paying it forward. You know what I think? Carmen said. I think you keep coming back here because you're scared of forgetting. Scared that if you spend too much time in boardrooms and press conferences, you'll forget what it feels like to be the person who needs help. Maybe, Elena admitted. Or maybe I just really love the coffee. They both laughed, and the diner filled with the morning rush, working people grabbing breakfast before shifts, the everyday rhythm of life continuing like it always had and always would. That night, as Elena was locking up the center after a late meeting, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Miss Rodriguez, this is Richard Kane. Elena froze. She had not heard his voice since the call from prison a year ago, the apology that had surprised her with its sincerity. I wanted to ask if I could meet with you. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. I'm being released next month. Early, for good behavior and completing rehabilitation programs. Elena thought about saying no, about the easy satisfaction of refusing him even this small thing. But she thought about Sophie's blog post, about the power of being seen, about second chances that had been given to her. Okay, she said. When you get out, call me. We can talk. Thank you, Richard said, and the gratitude in his voice was real. After hanging up, Elena stood in the empty center, in the building that existed because she had refused to accept that people like her didn't belong, and felt something shift. Forgiveness was not forgetting, was not excusing, but maybe it was allowing the possibility that people could change. That redemption was real if you were willing to do the work. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in a high school auditorium in Detroit as another Rodriguez Sterling Center was dedicated. The mayor spoke. Community leaders spoke. David spoke about the partnership between business and community, about stakeholder capitalism, about building systems that worked for everyone. And then it was Elena's turn. She looked out at the 500 faces in the audience and saw her past and present and future all at once. Single mothers who reminded her of herself 20 years ago. Children who looked like Sophie, different and beautiful and full of potential. Community organizers who reminded her of the people who had helped her when she had nothing. I'm going to tell you a story, Elena began. About a rainy night 2 years ago when I was finishing a 14-hour shift at a diner and I saw a little girl in a wheelchair, alone in the rain. The room went silent. Elena told them about Sophie, about David, about the choice to help a stranger when she was exhausted and broke and had every reason to just go home, about how that one choice had led to this moment, to 24 centers serving 100,000 families, to lives changed in ways she was still discovering. But here's what I want you to understand, she said. I'm not special. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just someone who paid attention, who saw another person who needed help and decided to do something about it. She paused. Let that sink in. Every single one of you has that power. To see someone, to help, to change a life. You don't need money or power or a fancy title. You just need to care and to act. The applause was thunderous, but Elena barely heard it. She was looking at a woman in the third row, crying quietly, clutching a baby to her chest. The woman from the diner, the one Elena had given the card to, who had gone to the center and gotten help and was now here, witnessing what was possible. After the ceremony, the woman approached. "Thank you," she said simply. "I start my new job Monday. My baby's in the center's daycare. We're going to be okay because you saw me." Elena hugged her, this stranger who was not a stranger, whose story was now woven into the tapestry of what they were building. "You did the work?" Elena said. "I just opened a door." "But that's everything," the woman replied. "Nobody opens doors for people like us. You have to break them down or go without. You opened it, that changes everything." The flight back to Chicago was delayed by weather, giving Elena 3 hours in the airport to work through emails and budget reports and the endless logistics of running programs that changed lives. But her mind kept drifting to Sophie's upcoming speech at the Disability Rights Conference, to Richard's impending release and the conversation they would have, to all the centers still to be built, all the families still to be served, all the work still to be done. Her phone buzzed. David, texting from the plane he had chartered because billionaires didn't wait for commercial flights. "Sophie wanted me to send you this." The attachment was a video. Sophie, standing in front of her bedroom mirror, practicing her speech. "My name is Sophie Sterling, and I want to tell you about the night I learned I mattered." She told the story Elena knew by heart now. The rain, the wheelchair stuck in the pothole, the woman who ran out without hesitation, the grilled cheese and soup that were about more than food. But she ended differently than Elena expected. "Miss Elena saved my life that night. But she did something more important. She showed me that I was worth saving, that I deserved kindness, that being different didn't mean being less." Sophie's voice strengthened. "And now I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing the same thing, seeing people who feel invisible, helping people who need it, proving that one person caring can change everything." The video ended. Elena was crying in the middle of the airport terminal, not caring who saw. Elena's phone rang. "Miguel." "Mom," she answered. "Everything okay?" "Everything's great," her oldest son said. "I wanted to tell you something. I got a job offer." "That's wonderful, baby. Where?" "A nonprofit in Detroit, community development, starting next month." Elena felt her throat tighten. "That's because of you," she said. "Watching what you do. I want to do that too." Carlos got on the line. "And I'm switching my major," he said, "to social work. I figure if my mom can change the world, the least I can do is help." Elena was openly crying now. "You two are going to do amazing things." "We learn from the best," Miguel said. After hanging up, Elena sat in the airport and thought about the ripples spreading outward. Her sons, inspired by her work, choosing careers that would help others. Sophie, becoming a voice for thousands. Carmen, heading to university. Patricia's daughter becoming a doctor. James teaching others to code. The woman from the diner, starting over. All of it connected. All of it flowing from one rainy night when she had chosen to see instead of look away. 2 months later, on a rainy night that felt like an echo of that first night, Elena left the center late. 9 p.m. Budget meeting that had run long. Rain starting as she walked to her car. She saw him from halfway across the parking lot. Young man, maybe 25, black, in a wheelchair, struggling with a flat tire on his accessible van. Rain soaking through his coat. No one stopping to help. Elena changed direction. "Hey there," she called out. "You need a hand?" The man looked up, suspicion and hope warring in his eyes. "I'm okay." Elena crouched beside the wheelchair, Rain already plastering her hair to her skull. "Your tire's flat. You're not okay. Can I help?" The man's defenses crumbled. "I don't have Tupperware. Can't afford it. Was trying to figure out how to change it myself." Elena pulled out her phone. "Let me call someone." "I can't pay for a tow truck." "You don't have to." Elena dialed, got a service, gave them the location. "They'll be here in 30 minutes. Come inside where it's warm while you wait." Inside the center, closed for the night, but Elena had keys to everything. She made coffee, found granola bars in the break room, sat across from the young man, whose name was Marcus, and listened to his story. College graduate, computer science degree. Can't find work because most offices aren't accessible. Behind on bills. About to lose his apartment, no family nearby, no idea what to do next. Elena listened, really listened, and when he finished, she gave him a card. "Come back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Ask for Claire Morrison. Tell her Elena sent you. We've got a job training program. And I might know some companies that need good programmers and are willing to make their offices accessible. Marcus stared at the card. Why are you helping me? Because someone helped me once when I needed it, Elena said. That's how it works. When the tow truck arrived and Marcus's van was fixed, when he drove away with the card clutched in his hand and something like hope in his eyes, Elena stood in the rain and felt it. The circle completing, the cycle continuing, the work perpetuating itself. This was the legacy that mattered. Not buildings with her name on them, or articles in Forbes, or even the 100,000 families served. But this, the understanding that kindness multiplied, that one act of caring could ripple out in ways you never saw, touching lives you would never know about, changing the world one person at a time. Elena drove home through the rain, and when she got to her apartment, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a letter handwritten on expensive stationery. Dear Miss Rodriguez, I was released today. I wanted to write before we meet because I need to say some things I'm not sure I'll have the courage to say in person. You were right about everything. About me. About what I did. About why I did it. I spent 2 years in prison thinking about that night in the bar. About the things I said. About the person I was. I destroyed you because you succeeded on merit, and I had only succeeded on connections. Because you belonged in that boardroom more than I ever did. Because you threatened the comfortable lie I had been telling myself my whole life, that I deserved what I had because I was special, not because I was privileged. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be different, to help people instead of hurting them, to use my privilege for good instead of using it to crush anyone who threatens my fragile ego. You changed my life, Miss Rodriguez. Not the way you changed Sophie's or David's or all those families your centers serve, but you changed it. You showed me what actual strength looks like, what real power is, and I'll never forget that. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, and thank you for everything you do. Richard Kane. Elena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer, next to Sophie's drawing from 2 years ago, next to the card from the first family that had graduated from the job training program. Redemption was possible, not easy, not guaranteed, but possible. And that was worth believing in. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Sophie's speech at the Disability Rights Conference had been live-streamed, 500 people in the room, 50,000 watching online. By morning, it had been shared 500,000 times. Sophie's words, young and clear and unwavering, speaking truth about being seen, about mattering, about the power of kindness in a world that often forgot to be kind. Elena watched the video, watched this girl who had been broken and was now whole, who had been invisible and was now a voice for thousands, and felt pride so intense it was almost painful. Her phone rang. David. Did you see it? I'm watching it now. She's going to change the world, David said, his voice thick with emotion. She already has, Elena replied. That afternoon, Elena met Richard Kane at a coffee shop in the Loop. Neutral territory, public, safe. He looked different, thinner, grayer, older than his 46 years. But there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Something that might have been humility. They talked for 2 hours. About prison, about therapy, about the 12-step program he had completed, the amends he was trying to make, about his plan to work with a nonprofit that helped formerly incarcerated people find employment. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Richard said again, but I wanted you to see that I'm trying, that I heard what you said, that I'm not the same person who destroyed you. I can see that, Elena said, and I hope you succeed. I really do. They parted with a handshake, nothing more, but it was enough. 6 months later, on the 2-year anniversary of that rainy night, the Sterling Technologies Board voted unanimously to create the Elena Rodriguez Leadership Institute, a program to identify and nurture future leaders from underrepresented communities, giving them the training, connections, and support to break into rooms they had been excluded from. $20 million endowment, full scholarships, mentorship from executives, a pipeline into Sterling Technologies and partner companies. The announcement was made at a ceremony attended by everyone who mattered. Sophie, now 10 and a half, using just a cane for balance, speaking about disability inclusion. David, talking about how Elena had taught him what leadership really meant. The mayor of Chicago, community leaders, and hundreds of ordinary people whose lives had been changed. Elena stood at the podium and felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the possibility, the future being built. "I want to tell you one more time about that rainy night," she said, "because the story doesn't end with me getting a job or Richard going to prison or even these centers getting built. The story ends with what happens next. With Marcus, the young man I met in the parking lot last month, who starts his new job as a programmer next week. With every kid who goes through our programs and then comes back to help the next generation. With everyone in this room who decides that seeing people, really seeing them, matters more than anything else." She looked out at the crowd, at faces young and old, at the city she loved spread out through the windows behind them. "That rainy night, I saw a little girl who needed help, and I helped her. That's all. But that one choice changed everything. Not just for Sophie or David or me, but for everyone here. For the 100,000 families we've served. For the million more we're going to reach." Elena's voice strengthened. "And every single one of you has that same power. To see someone who needs help. To do something about it. To change the world one person at a time. The question is, will you?" The applause was deafening, but Elena barely heard it. She was looking at Sophie in the front row, tears streaming down her face, mouthing the words "thank you." And Elena understood, maybe for the first time, what legacy really meant. Not buildings or programs or even lives changed, though all of that mattered. But the understanding that rippled out from one act of kindness, touching more lives than you could count, creating a wave that would outlast you. That night, alone in her apartment, Elena sat on her couch and thought about everything that had happened in 2 years. From waitress to vice president, from invisible to seen, from one woman helping one girl to a movement that was changing how companies thought about their responsibilities to communities. And she thought about tomorrow, about the work still to be done, about the centers still to be built, about all the people still sitting in the rain, waiting for someone to see them. Her phone buzzed one last time. Sophie sending a photo. Her and David at the park, both of them on bikes. Sophie's adapted with special handles, both of them grinning at the camera. The caption read, "Sunday bike ride, no phones, just us. Thank you for teaching him how to be my dad again." Elena saved the photo, then turned off her phone. Tomorrow, the work would continue. Tomorrow, there would be more people to help, more systems to change, more lives to touch. Tomorrow, the impossible task of making the world a little more kind, a little more just, a little more willing to see people who had been invisible. But tonight, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself to rest, to feel what she had earned, to know with absolute certainty that she had mattered, that her life had meant something, that one rainy night 2 years ago, she had made a choice that changed everything. And that was enough. The rain started again around midnight, drumming against her windows, and Elena fell asleep to the sound, dreaming of a little girl in a wheelchair, of grilled cheese and soup, of the moment everything changed, the moment she decided to see instead of look away, the moment she chose kindness over convenience, the moment she proved that one person, one choice, one act of caring could change the world. And in the morning, when the rain had stopped and the city woke up to another day, Elena Rodriguez would wake up too and keep changing it. Because that was what you did when you understood that everyone mattered. You showed up, you saw people, you helped, and you never ever stopped.